and welcome to a very special live edition of The Boxing Show with me, your host, Rob Tebbutt. As always, I'd like to remind everybody before we get started to please like, comment and subscribe, turn your notifications on for more boxing content. Now that's out of the way, I am joined by the able Barry Jones and the able Andy Clarke. I don't know why I said able, but anyway, more than able, the best pundits that you ever did see, and we're here live. Barry, how are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm alright. I've just found there's little wooden steps here to put my feet
handy,
up.
aren't they?
Can I little? My legs drag, my legs hang, so I get pins and needles, and now I don't have to get live. Look at this. This is brilliant. It feels like a new man.
Yeah, so I'm always worried when we're live and Barry goes, "Oh, I've just found this." Oh God, what's he going to say now? But anyway, over to the super safe, Mr. Andy Clarke. How are you, Andy?
Yeah, good. All the better for spending most of my day with you, Rob.
You have indeed. We've come over from the Buatsi Azeez press conference, which is why we're live today. We didn't have time to film at the usual time, so we decided to bring all of the latest boxing chat to you live. But yeah, it was an interesting one today, wasn't it? It was an interesting press conference between Buatsi and Dan Azeez. I said to somebody else, it feels like the fight's been announced 10 times, but we finally got there. And yeah, I'm expecting a good fight on October the 21st.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think it has been announced 10 times. It just wasn't confirmed until relatively recently. But I don't see how it can miss, really, because of the styles of the two fighters. And I like the fact that we're not going to get any kind of race for the bottom in the build-up. But I think it might get a bit more spicy than people think, because it just brings to mind a little bit the fight we had between Luke Campbell and Tommy Coyle a few years ago.
You said that on Sky already today. I was watching.
I was
watching.
Where they're all best buds, and then towards the end, Luke Campbell just said to him, "I don't know where this came from. We're not really friends." With Azeez and Buatsi, I don't really know whether they're that tight or not, to be honest. They've sparred and they move in the same circles, but I don't know whether the relationship is all that, to be honest with you. And I just wonder whether we'll get a bit more spikiness from the pair of them as we get closer.
Azeez will force it. You could see it today. He doesn't want to be too disrespectful, but he's trying to force Buatsi to say something a little bit.
Yeah, I found that quite telling. We saw little clips as well of the face-off that they'd done together as well. The gloves are off, and you could see that, couldn't you? And whether or not that's just Azeez knows that Buatsi can be quite a methodical guy and just trying to bring that side out of him. I found it quite interesting. I spoke to both Azeez and Buatsi today and said to, because Azeez did something in here, and he said, when I was coming through, Josh and Dwayne and all of the guys were so good at bringing me forward. He said today, which I thought was one of the standout lines of the press conference, when I was an amateur, I was shit. It was very, very Dan Azeez. And I sort of put that to Buatsi and said, how much he'd spoken about how he'd helped you and how this, tell us about your relationship. And he was like, he was just a guy who came to spar. And I was like, oh, great. It's one of those cold water things.
But he's clever, Azeez, because what he's saying all these things about, I shouldn't be where I am now, and all that sort. He don't paraphrase it, but it's that sort of stuff in it. I'm just here. I just fight. Every fight is just the new fight. Just trying to win that next fight. That's all I care about. He takes pressure off himself constantly.
Exactly.
He takes that air of expectation that Buatsi can't get rid of, unfortunately. Or fortunately, whatever, that might give you the edge, but he takes it off himself continuously. And if anyone's starting to think, he's got a chance here, he's almost saying, listen, I know I'm the beat. I know I'm the opponent. I know he thinks he's going to win. I know he thinks I'm an easy touch. And that's all to keep pressure off himself. And it's very intelligent.
It's something that we spoke about a little bit on the way here, Andy, was the fact that it's sort of, for Buatsi, I mean, we've had, I don't want to say this fight, I don't want to be disrespectful, but we've had Buatsi versus Craig Richards fairly recently. Seems like Buatsi's in a similar sort of place with this, where he's kind of one fight away, but he needs the domestic acid test or whatever you want to call it before he gets there. But in a way, I feel like the pressure is more on Buatsi here, considering the level that he's boxed at throughout his career. Not only to win against Dan Azeez, but if he's going to be boxing for a world title, to win well. Do you feel that way, Barry?
I do. First of all, only one fight away. Is he, though? How's he going to get? Where's he going to get the opportunity to fight? Is Bivol still fighting? I haven't seen heard from him for ages. Where did he get the look in? Is it the WBA? Is it an angle there? I don't know how he gets a shot at anything. So it's I don't know where he goes, actually, but there's all the pressures on him. He has been for a while, because he's out the Olympics, he looked the shoe-in. Him and Josh Kelly, who didn't win a medal, looked flashy and good looking kid. He looked like a real sellable product, and Buatsi looked the closest thing I'd seen to Holyfield since Holyfield. That's the truth. He looked just like him in many ways. His style, hands high, blocking, strong, tenacious, good technique, and he looked like he was ready made for the pros. I felt, and he looked good, but he hasn't shone, and he hasn't. He's a talent, and he moved over to to Oakland, and everyone thought that was a great move for him, but he went with the trainer who teach you to use your brain more than use your attributes. I would say that. I think I might be wrong, and then everyone's complaining that he's overcautious. Well, what did you expect? Like he's going with Andre Ward's trainer. Andre Ward was a brilliant fighter, one of the best to ever do it, but got criticised continuously and by HBO for that, because he would take too long to pull the trigger, because everything had to be perfect and right. He didn't care. That's what made him so good, but didn't make him a massively sellable product at the highest level. So Buatsi was never going to... if you wanted to be more excited, you got to go with a trainer who instills that react now sort of thing, which he can do, by the way. But I'm not saying it's a bad move to go there. I think we expect him to be redesigned into something a bit more exciting and explosive, and that was never going to happen. So I don't know. He's a talent, and he always felt like he had good enough to be a world champion or fight for a world title. But I still think he has to prove it. And Dan Azeez, should never be. I've covered Dan from early in his career, of course, and he looked good, but I never thought he'd get anywhere near a world title shot. I never thought he'd be a European champion. I didn't. He's proved he's more than good enough now, and when he boxed for the European title, I thought he would win it. Even though he had to go to Paris to do it, I really fancied him to get the win anyway. But he had no pedigree and no real. When you watched him early in his career, he didn't look good enough that he would get over the line. So it's all the pressures on Buatsi. He has to. He's beating the guy who shouldn't be where he is, and Buatsi shouldn't be where he is now. Buatsi should be moved on further. I always like to say that there should be if you're an Olympic medalist, you should be fighting for a world title before the next Olympics. I don't know why I make that. I just made that up. That's Barry's law.
I think that's a good rule of thumb, though.
Well done, Barry.
At least that for the fighter and the promoter and the manager and all the people involved in it, that should be the aim.
They've had COVID, though, haven't they? I understand a little bit of that. And injuries can play a part. But if they haven't, and they're good enough to do that, and in this era now where everyone's super rushed, then you always tend to think, why hasn't that happened? And maybe we can go back to COVID and injuries, but I mean, if it's more than that, then you start to think, is there a problem that we don't see? Is there a confidence problem? Is that laid-back attitude, a problem for his ambition? I'm not saying that it is. I'm just trying to pose questions to maybe that people have answers to. But for talent alone, he's good enough to mix it with the top. Whether he beats him or not, he's in a really incredibly hard weight. But on paper, he should beat Dan Azeez quite comfortable, but it won't be comfortable. It won't. I mean, we've learned about Dan Azeez now. He's a man who won't make it comfortable for anybody, even if he gets bashed up. Say he goes up against Better BF somehow. Who would ever think that? Like a couple of years ago. Say he beats a Buatsi, goes up against Better BF. Better BF will ultimately, you would think, if he gets past Callum Smith, bash Dan Azeez up. But it wouldn't be comfortable for him, because Dan Azeez will put so much pressure on him that he'll force you to beat him up. Does that make any sort of sense?
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah, and I think it's a hard fight for Josh Buatsi, and what will he feel like if he thinks it's going to be an easy fight? Technically, because he just think I got so much more in my locker than he has, and he has. But that's not boxing's not all about skill and ability. If it was, I wouldn't be such now. I'd be on a beach. No. Listen, the better fighters in my gym as a kid, more talent than I had, and every boxer will tell you the same bloody story. So I'm not going to regurgitate it, but it's, if I can say the word. But but it's true. It's not. It takes more than my brother had more talent than me. There you go. And what's he doing? I don't know what he's doing. I don't speak to him. But but what I mean is he had more natural talent than I did, but he didn't have the effort and the determination. I mean, he's a tougher man than me, by the way. But he didn't have that. That's toughness. Not about standing in a field to fight somebody. Toughness is getting up in the morning, going for a run. That when it's raining, that's the toughness. Going to the gym, making weight, being disciplined, that's the toughness. The fighting is just is the end product of it. But all the toughness is done before you see it, before the cameras come, before the TV cameras roll, the lights come on. I'm going down a rabbit hole here. You got to
That's
stop
all
me.
right, man.
You got to stop me.
That's okay.
It's a good fight.
There we go. The live viewers are entertained as always by Barry Jones. And I just want to touch on something that Barry said there, and I think it's something that we're going to definitely come up at some point during the show today, which is about going to a trainer and making use of your natural attributes. Of course, we're going to talk about Anthony Joshua and Derek James slightly later on. The version of Joshua Buatsi that we've seen so far under Virgil Hunter, do you feel like that's improved him? Do you think he's gone away? Something that we've spoken about quite often with various different fighters about, going somewhere and learning things is one thing, but you don't want to take away from you what you're naturally good at, what brought you to the dance, so to speak. Do you think there has been progression with Joshua Buatsi recently, or do you feel like maybe this has stagnated, which seems to be one of the criticisms that's levelled at him?
It's maybe still a little bit too early to tell, and that we need him in with someone who's really going to test him, I think, before we can maybe make that judgment. But what people criticised Josh for earlier in his pro career was that he got hit too much. He got hit with shots he didn't need to get hit with. But the way I looked at it was that he was in with people who he would look at and just think, route one, I'm going to beat you. The quickest way for me to beat you is to go through you. Yes, you are going to catch me a few times, but you're not going to hurt me or take me out. So that's what I'm going to do. And that's why I ended up getting hit a little bit too much, maybe. And now you could argue that he's gone to a trainer who's possibly going to take him a little bit too far the other way. For me, what I loved about him in the amateurs, and Okoli was kind of the same, but Buatsi was better, was the fact that he would look to finish fights inside the distance, even over 3 rounds. And that's why he caused, so much... he created so much attention for himself at the Olympics, because he was chinning people. Elshad Razalov, like 3rd time he'd been to the Olympics and Uzbek #1, and he just went after him and bashed him up, basically.
Fucking show off.
Yeah,
Picking names up like that, it's unbelievable.
But then when he lost the fight, it was to a very tricky Kazakh fighter.
What was his name?
I think he was
I'm joking.
Adilbek Niyazambatov.
Niyazambatov, yeah.
And I just wonder whether he's kind of just, as a pro, has just got stuck in a gear a little bit, and we need to see him forced into a higher gear. And I feel like Azeez is definitely capable of doing that. I'm not writing down off by any stretch. He's capable of winning that fight. But if Buatsi is going to win, then he's going to have to show us something that he hasn't showed us before in his pro career. I'm absolutely convinced about that. So, and that's why I'm looking forward to it, because I think that whichever way it goes and however it plays out, it's going to be a good watch.
Don't forget, guys and girls, to get your questions in. We are live. I know we premiere most weeks, but we are live. So I am seeing all of your comments, both good and bad, in the live chat. So don't forget to let us know who you think wins, Dan Azeez or Joshua Buatsi. But before we move on, let's just touch upon the co-main, a fight that we were supposed to get a little while ago between Isaac Chamberlain and Mikael Lawal for the British and vacant Commonwealth Cruiserweight titles. That was, again, like a little spice between them today at the press conference. I think it's safe to say that there is genuine animosity between those two, where there isn't necessarily between Azeez and Buatsi, but that's a fight that I'm looking forward to, Andy.
Oh, absolutely. I was really looking forward to that when it was supposed to be on the Billum Smith-Okoli undercard in Bournemouth, and Chamberlain was massively frustrated when it didn't happen. Lawal's an interesting guy, I've always thought. He's very difficult to get too much out of. I know the guys at Stonebridge who've been around him forever say the same thing. It's just, he's not all that effusive. You look at his backstory, which he doesn't really talk about, but it is harrowing. Yeah, really it's as tough as it gets, and they're not that unusual in boxing, but it is. It's how you come through something like that. You don't, unless you're very mentally strong. It doesn't mean that you're going to be mentally stronger than someone who hasn't been through that, but it tells you something about the person, that he's still here and he's still boxing. And it's been a long road to that British title, but he got there in the end. I think he genuinely loathes Chamberlain. As soon as Isaac started talking today, I looked at Mikael's face, and he just kind of dropped in that way that, he just immediately looked furious, basically. And Chamberlain's good, Isaac's good at just taking on that role. And it's easy in this instance because he's got just a ready-made stick to poke him with, which is, you went missing last time. What happened? But this is a huge fight for the pair of them, and you could argue maybe that it's bigger for Chamberlain because he's been much more high-profile throughout his career. We've known about the sparring and all of that right from the beginning. He's always looked like he's had ability. I think against Billam Smith, he proved that he's got the minerals as well. But he's had 2 really big fights in his career and he's lost them both. I don't think he can really afford to lose a third one. He can't be that guy who loses big fights.
Because this is not the bigger fight than those two. That's why as well. That's important.
This is it's a level, maybe even a level or 2 below those fights.
Yes, it is now. In hindsight,
the Crowley fight,
But it's a major title. You know, he can't. He just cannot afford to lose this fight.
Barry, who'd you lean towards in that fight? I think you'd have to make Chamberlain the favourite.
Yeah, you do. He's a massive favourite. You do. I think Lawal has the strength to put you under pressure. The thing about Chamberlain, this is why I thought Billam Smith would beat him, is because he's quite laid back and lazy. So you just force him to work at the pace he's not comfortable at, and I think he's a struggle. But he showed something that I didn't think he had in that fight, and was be able to match the pace of Billam Smith. So, I think for Lawal, that's a problem. He doesn't fight at a really high pace, but he's going to be the aggressor, and he's the naturally heavier handed. But Chamberlain got faster hands, better technique, good feet, good movement. So everything points to him doing well in the fight. He might give some rocky moments, but I think he gets a stoppage. There you go. Ooh. Yeah. I do. I think Lawal will do the right thing and have a good go and do the best he can do, actually. I think he'll make a really good account of himself, but I just think the way his balance is and his feet, I think he'll get caught missing. He'll be missing and getting caught over the top, or Chamberlain take a little step to the side and catch him on the blind side. He won't see it. It'll be a shot that you don't see. That might not be the biggest shot he takes of the night, but the one you don't see will be the one that makes him all wobbly legged, and then Chamberlain is a decent finisher. That's how I think it's going to go. But again, if that war against Billam Smith taking a bit out of him, when he hasn't got that quick reaction or that second gear, then he might be in trouble.
Yeah, I think he'll be much better for having what was it, 6 rounds that he boxed Dylan Brejon over, or 8? Did 8 rounds, and Brejon's a decent fighter. I mean, if Brejon was to box Mikael Lawal, I think it'd be a 50-50 fight.
Lawal's got to jump on him. Yeah, like really early. Just it's easy to say that because you're gambling, and then if it doesn't come off, it looks like really bad tactics. But you got to think, I'm not going to box this guy. And the longer the fight goes on, if I haven't made a dent in him, whether it's tired him out or hurt him or whatever else, anything, as the round goes on, if Chamberlain gets comfortable in a rhythm, he can win quite comfortably. Moving around and not really making a massive effort. I would say that. So I think Lawal's got to put it on him really quick and to almost half gamble that he might be blowing out of his backside after 8 rounds, but it'd be worth it if he can make that impression.
We look forward to seeing it. I will do predictions at the end. Lewis Moore asked, Rob, I've always wanted to know who signed the WBSS glove in the middle. This is actually George Groves. Big up George Groves. That's and the other this is not a question, but Beterbiev presenting, I'd have real difficulty making £175. But anyway, moving on, let's talk about this past weekend. Anthony Joshua returned to the ring with a stoppage win over Robert Helenius. Barry, you were there fighting the good fight.
He was there. He was right behind me.
Yeah, but I want to talk to you. Thoughts on Anthony Joshua's performance?
I was there. The finish was fantastic. I think you can focus on that, but I think the problems are still there. That he's still not stepping. He's just not stepping in with the jab. I felt like saying it. Like, I'm not saying he should listen to me, but stepping in with the jab means he can't throw the right hand. But he's not getting the purchase on the right hand. He's not getting the right weight on the shot. He's not. So if you don't step in with the jab, then he won't punch through the body, through the target. I've been saying all week, I try not to say the word anymore. He won't punch through the target with the right hand if he doesn't step in with the jab. Now he boxing again, like he did with Franklin. He boxed quite well. He's moving in and out. He's trying to minimise the damage. His hands are always high. Keeps his shape well. Tried to step in now and again, but you could see a few times that he was trying to throw that. You can see he's lost confidence in his jab because he's trying to throw the right hand from too far out. He was trying to throw the right hand on its own at times, and it was so far out. You just think that's just like dangerous against a guy of Helenius' stature, who, if he was a little bit more motivated, because he looked like he wanted to survive from the offset, Helenius, to be fair, then maybe he gets caught.
Yeah, I thought exactly the same thing because a couple of times he almost threw a right hand lead, didn't he? From way back, and I remember just thinking, wow, that is risky.
A right hand lead, you do it when you're either skipping around No, if you've got like, something's happened and you skip off and just whip one in, or like a Sonny Edwards, for instance, you can imagine seeing him do it, can you? Twisting the body, almost moving the feet. Or someone throws a shot and you counter over him with a right hand. Or you slide in, but you've got to have real fast and real guile to do that. So to throw a right hand off, it's a counter shot, a single right hand usually. So to throw it from so far out like that when you're not moving your feet is lack of imagination. So, but he didn't box that bad. I've slated him. He didn't box too bad, but it wasn't great again. The problem still looked there. But I think the finish is very important because once he did commit with that double jab, I've been saying this long before anyone. I should be his trainer, for God's sake. No,
sound like Antonio Tarver.
I know you fully want to Antonio Tarver, the best trainer in the world. But he's never trained anyone. But if he threw the jab, forget about he threw the jab and jabbed down. That was brilliant. But forget about that. He committed to it. He knew he had in mind what he wanted to do. I'm going to go bam, 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 and he got the rhythm, bam, bam. But the speed in the right hand for him was brilliant. He turns from the hips, everything was correct because that front foot was there, and he knew he could see the tag and he could see the back of his head. So he knew he was going to punch right through him. He knew where he was. He knew he was going to land, and because he went high and low, come over the top with it. It was a great shot, and I think that now for the first time now, like Derek James can say, sit him down and go, you had to go there. That wasn't bad, but it didn't quite work out. See where your feet were too far out, or you're not. You didn't. If you had a double jab there, then you were close to throw that right hand. You didn't throw. You threw on the first jab. You got to throw the second jab to get close. Or that didn't work. This didn't work. That was okay. Look at now they got something that I've been telling you and it's worked. The belief, the trust in your trainer. Now you go listen and like he actually told me to do that. And he was telling us the double jab, wasn't he, in the corner, I think. It's worked, and that's important. For his confidence that he can go, I can knock people out again. I knew I could, and everyone knows I can, but people dogged me, and I know I got it. It was a great shot. That might be one of his better knockouts, actually. It was fantastic. Okay, he was a guy who hadn't trained for 12 rounds, and he was a tired opponent. He was a big, tall guy, so you can look, but forget about that. He knocked at anybody. He's done it. Now he's felt it. Now he knows he can trust that guy when he tells him you can believe. You got to believe what your trainer's telling you. Because your trainer's telling you things quite often and you don't want to fucking do. Don't want to do it because it's difficult. It's hard. You got to take the risk of getting hit. Well, just double jab him and right hand. Yeah, I got to go for it. But I'm walking into punches here, mate. You do it. When you got that bond with the trainer, he's telling you things like in a really hard fight. He's telling you stuff. You know it's for you. You know it'll work if you do it. Or he believes it'll work if you do it, and you trust him enough to go with it, go with his instincts. And now he has that, and hopefully that'll work for them. And I think that the fact that he's knocked somebody out now with a really good technique, with being assertive, with committing to his attacks. It wasn't like the guys come swinging, he just threw a shot out of defence, out of just trying to keep him away. He set them attack up. And it's worked, and I keep fucking saying the same thing here. But that's what it is. He did the right things, did a good technique, he committed to his attack, he believed in himself, and he got the result that he used to get. And for him, forget about the rest of us, for him, I think that's so important. Because his next fight is the fight of his life. I'd say that if it's going to be Wilder, it's the fight of his life.
Yeah, I mean, we'll stick a pin in the Wilder fight until later on in the show because I think some of the comments after the fight were quite telling. But we'll throw it over to you, Andy. Just your general top line thoughts, I suppose, on Anthony Joshua's win.
Pretty much what Barry just said there. With regard to the confidence, that it's huge. It's huge. Firstly, just feeling that that shockwave down your arm and watching someone go down the way he did. He hasn't seen that happen to somebody for really quite a long time, and actually it was pretty impressive that punch did the damage it did, given that by the time it made contact he was pretty much at full extension. So to carry that power right to the end of the punch is quite unusual. And with regard to the trainer as well, I think that is the key point, is that you can tell somebody something however many times, and you've maybe got a similar kind of thing with Sugar Hill and Lawrence Okoli, until you can actually get them to do it and then see that it works and that what you're saying makes sense, then it just doesn't really mean anything. But now he's got that first-hand evidence of it. So all round, I think getting the finish that he got was crucial. And to the point where it's not quite as simple as what went before it doesn't really matter, because I do find it very frustrating that he won't just bang in that jab, because why not? He always used to, and what's stopping him? But maybe having finished the fight the way that he did, it can just take him up that notch to the point where he is now able to do that. Mentally, I just think it was really, really big for him. And just kind of looking at him during the week, I did like what I saw during the week. You never know if that'll translate into a performance or not, but I felt before Franklin, he said that he wasn't really bothered what people thought anymore, but you could see that he was because of the ride he's been on, and particularly post Usyk, the second fight. All of a sudden, everybody's questioning everything he does, and is he even that good? Did he even really deserve those titles? Blah, blah. He said he didn't care at that point, but you got the feeling that he definitely did, and he was finding the whole thing a bit bewildering still. Maybe he still is to an extent, but I think he's a lot better on that front now. I think he's at peace with it a bit more, that you know what people are always going to say, whatever they want to say about everything that I do. And I genuinely just have to not care about that. And I think he's closer to that now than he has been before, which for his own sanity and for his approach to fights, I think is quite important.
Yeah, there was quotes attributed to him during the week where it said, people didn't love me, they loved the belts. Which I thought was quite telling.
No, they loved him, man.
Yeah, because I that's not how I interpreted it. But anyway,
they loved him. Like I was never in love with him. But
thanks for pointing out that.
Stunning revelation.
Just say it
live.
I don't even shave my chest.
No, but I mean, but after that Klitschko fight, the speech I go back to all the time. The speech he gave after that Klitschko fight,
great,
I loved him then.
Yeah,
I thought that was just. I don't know Anthony. I don't know him from Adam. I don't
that.
think I've said 2 words to him maybe since I've ever known he existed. But like, though I did see him box in Las Vegas in about 2009 or 10, actually in the Hard Rock Cafe in the afternoon. Jeff Mayweather had a fight with who gives a shit.
Shout out Jeff
Zab Judah. They always had.
Oh yeah.
I was there. I said all I said to Judah was, "Look at me, but they're looking at you," and walked off. Job's done. But but I even loved him then. He was like the darling of boxing. I can understand all of a sudden then he became the devil. And Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury, gets off the floor against Deontay Wilder in a brilliant performance, and he becomes the saint all of a sudden. You know what I mean? It was like, why can't they just both be like you? If you like one, you got to hate the other one. It's like that, isn't it? That's how it works. And he became the villain for no reason at all. And I think that something to do with Black Lives Matter. He said something there, and people weren't happy with what he said. I was like, he can say what he wants to say. He didn't say, and if you actually listen to what he said, he didn't say anything fucking wrong. By the way, just is it people's interpretations of what he said they weren't happy with, and then that caused another problem. Then and
it had in between there, so the Fury fight was December 2018. Then the next fight where either Joshua or Fury were in the ring was Joshua getting beat by Ruiz, and then Fury had the Tom Schwartz, Apollo Creed stuff, and went off like. And then I feel like that was that little 6-month window was where the kind of changing of the guard sort of a little bit, wasn't it?
Fury's been brilliant ever since, really, haven't he? Let's not go on about where he's going now, but I mean, he's clearly the best heavyweight in the world, I feel, and that's the truth. But with Joshua, 2 things. The one about the jab, he used to have a rhythm to this. He used to be on his balls of his feet, Anthony, and then he would sit down for the right hand. So the jab was a good weapon, but he bounced in with it. So now he's a bit heavier guy and older. He's lost that bounce. I think he's lost the rhythm, the movement, and he can't do that anymore. I think he's too heavy now, too muscle bound now than he was back then even to do that. So he has to find a different way. And also the right hand, I spoke about the right hand, like all the power is on the end of the shot. There's more power on the end of the shot than there is here. I would say that. But the difference is that it's knowing your judgment of distance. So the end of the shot, but it's only like however many inches your head is. You've got to be that much extension through it. You've got to finish by the back of your head. So that's getting that right. So what he was getting before, like recently in the Franklin fight and others, is stopping here. So then going at the end, there's no power at the end then because it's lost all, because you're just touching the target and it's finished. So you've got to be at the end of the shot. There's more power at that because it's fully extended and you use the whole whip motion. Can I see that?
See?
Fantastic. And people say I can't fucking punch. But I think, and now though with that knockout, because he got his foot close, he knows he can get you at the end of the shot, but right through the target, and that's the difference. It's only that much. That much difference. If it's that much, then it stunts the shot, and if it's only that much, then it takes that just that last little turn of the shot at the end, a little bit of torque you need to really make that impact. Because he threw it, it was fast as well. It wasn't like lightning fast, but for a big massive fella, there was speed in that right hand, so he doesn't see it Helenius anyway. Bam, bam, whap, like that, and he's done.
Playing devil's advocate, was Joshua getting his feet closer, or was Helenius slowing down?
Helenius was slowing down, but he still had to. But and he was slowing down. Of course, he was slowing down. He wasn't doing anything. Helenius surviving most. He had a little go now and again. He threw a few good shots, and Joshua was a little bit marked up. But that's age. You get older, your face don't. You just can't. You mark up much more easier. But he went through the motions. That's what I'm trying to say. He did it though. He might have a punch bag in front of him. It doesn't matter. But he's done it in front of everybody.
Both things can be true, can't they? Helenius could be slowing down. He could be still getting his feet
exactly.
closer.
But the fact that he just did it will help him. Will mentally will help him. And maybe the next fight, whoever it is, he'll try and do that in round 3. Rather, it'll take him less rounds to commit. To get comfortable, that's what it is. He's not comfortable. He's just not comfortable in there. You can clearly see it. He's thinking. He's saying it's a game of chess and all that. I don't think the heavyweights don't play chess. No, but you still have to think what you're doing. Of course, it is. No, it's not just to go in there, throw your hands around. There has to be structure to your work, but you have to know when to commit. And and I was with Tony Bellew, and he was talking about Lennox Lewis wasn't the same after being knocked out, but I think I have to disagree. I didn't believe that. I didn't say nothing. I kept my mouth shut, but he's big, isn't he? But I didn't really quite agree. I think Lennox did commit after.
He still committed to his shots. Was he as gung ho as an offensive fighter? Probably not. He became more of a
more cautious. But when he went, he still went.
Yeah. But there was still conviction in his shots. Yeah. He still put his shots together.
The jab was still hard. That's what I'm saying. And that's all Joshua's problem is his left hand. That's all it is. It lacks weight. It lacks authority, and also what he lacks now is and it happened to Mike Tyson at the end of his career, of course, is that no one's scared of him.
Yeah, fear factor.
Yeah, no one's scared of him anymore. You could see when they'd be in the ring with him, even though they wanted to come and they would have a go, they were still a little bit like, even Ruiz in the first fight, he's getting hammered, wasn't he? Let's be honest, but he's thinking, I can't afford to take a shot here. Now they're going, fucking watch this now. Look at him. No, they're not scared. Helenius wasn't scared for 1 minute. He wasn't trying to win the fight because he's just passed his sell-by date now, isn't he? Unfortunately, they're tricky opponent for most fighters. I would say that. But Joshua's not. He's lost that intimidating factor. This might help go back now. People go, he's lost confidence. He never throw that right hand with conviction ever again. But no, he's done it. So that'll make other fighters be more wary of him, and then like every big guy, you got to be a bully. I'm not saying he's a bully as a person, but in the ring, he's a bully. Nothing wrong with that. He wants to be a bully in the ring. Bullies feed off your insecurities. The more scared you become, the more confident they become. And the more confident they become, the more they bully you. That's how it works, isn't it? I think I've been a bully. I know.
No, psychologically, the kind of that tipping point, that kind of seesaw, is just really fascinating because he's in the ascendancy. And then he gets beaten by Ruiz, and what happens against Usyk, and then all of a sudden it swings back the other way, and he's really, really vulnerable. And then he's desperately now fighting to get it back to kind of at least level. And I think he probably has, like you say, after that knockout, because before that, I think anybody would have fancied it. They'd have thought, great, I'll jump on him and see what happens if that's the kind of route you wanted to take. I'm pretty sure that's what Dillian Whyte would have done. But now it's different, You can't really underestimate what that could do for him.
What he needs, I think, is another fight like not Dillian Whyte.
Dillian Whyte's got his own fight at the minute.
But another fighter like Dillian Whyte who will probably just go, I'm going to have a go here, to force Joshua. That's why I thought it was the perfect fight for Joshua, because it either forces him to commit, or we know he's just not going anywhere ever again. You know what I mean? Not going anywhere near the top level ever again. Yeah,
it's important that even though we're dissecting Joshua versus Helenius, really we're dissecting Joshua versus Fury, Joshua versus Wilder, Joshua versus...
That's how it's everything points. It's like, he's getting criticising Joshua, and I mean, no, we are, but that's our job, by the way, to critique everyone. But I mean, it's all about, it's everything he does is with a view to them 3 names. Yeah. Or whoever else comes up in a minute. Is a view to him boxing the top, not a view to him boxing. Listen, he can be Johnny Fisher. I fancy Joshua against Johnny Fisher. He looks supersonic against Johnny Fisher. Put him in against Harry Armstrong, you look $1 million. No, people have got to say, I was digging Joshua out. But we're talking about him fighting the best, the very best. I'm not saying Johnny Fisher might be the very best in the end. I don't know. But I'm saying I'm trying to dig him out now. Fucking hell.
But I mean, he's a to save you from yourself. He's a former 2-time unified champion and Olympic gold medalist. Yeah, you have to critique someone based on where they are.
That's exactly it, and that's where he wants to get back to. He's not in it still for anything other than that. And what does that tell us Saturday about how he'll get on against them? Not all that much, but it tells us that I fancy him more now than I did before the weekend. I fancy him more now than I certainly would have done if he'd gone 12 rounds against Helenius. But, I mean, he can't win to an extent, can he? Because everybody says, well, he's got to chin him in great style, and he did it. And then everyone's saying, well, he should have done it sooner.
Yeah, exactly.
And he should have done it this and that. And you're right, it's perfectly valid for us to look at it and critique it and analyse it, because that is what we're here for. But at the same time, all he's interested in, and therefore all we're interested in, is can he win a world title back? And that involves beating Fury or Usyk at the minute.
And I would say, even though Joshua's not, it's a totally different story to Fury. But Fury against Schwartz and the other guy never looked great. Fury in those two fights, in between Wilder 1 and 2, which he was fantastic in, by the way. Both of them, I thought he was absolutely fantastic. But those two fights, he didn't look great in either one of them.
No, I mean, he very nearly lost against Wallin, didn't he?
Yeah.
I mean,
the Schwartz fight, but with all due respect to Tom Schwartz, I mean,
but he still didn't look great against it.
He did the whole drop in the arms.
No, but I mean, I didn't know. But you could say
as a showcase fight,
you should have got rid of him straight away. Yeah. Again, because that would have been Joshua in there. I'm not sticking up for Joshua over Fury. I'm a probably bigger fan of Fury than I am of Joshua, to be honest, because he's more my sort of style. But I mean, like, if that was Joshua in him against Wallin, Schwartz, he would have criticised for not getting him out there in round 1. So, I would say that much. But obviously with styles, there's different things. But I think, so Fury's haven't had stellar performances throughout. But the difference is with Fury, in recent memory, the fights that have mattered, he's turned up correct there, willing to do whatever it takes to win. Yeah. That's the biggest difference. And I'm not saying Josh hasn't got no problems of putting himself out there, but he's looked vulnerable. And that's just a go ahead. I'm not going to let you talk, Rob. You're dying to answer the question.
I'm dying to ask a question from Matt Butters, who says, if White had been in the ring that night instead of Helenius, how would AJ have done considering how he performed?
Well, I think he performs differently because I think White puts it on him, like we just said. White puts it on him really early, and I think he does fire back. I think White's slower than him, much slower. I think there's more decline on White than people realise.
Yeah,
I think.
I agree.
And with White, the way White fights, because he's so erratic with his shots, when he's sharp and when he's fresher, he's a problem, because White, every shot that White throws, he's all in. So with that, your technique's not always great, but you're so tenacious. You throw the other shot, put you back on balance pretty much. He swings shots in, but you come over his front foot, but he'll come back with another one and another one. So you almost don't see him really falling over himself. That's what he would do if you only threw one shot. And so I think also the good technique and the structure of Joshua always would help him with that. And the problem with that, when you have like that, when you're still fast and acceleration and pace in your punches, you're hard to fight against. But when you slow down, that being erratic is just an invitation to get hit. All of a sudden you're like that. Whereas before you were like that, but you would like that with people just worry about the punch. Now you're like, I can see this coming. Fury, I would say this, he wasn't quite that way, but Fury against White, Fury just waited for White to make a mistake, pretty much. He was never really panicked. He just waited, and he just didn't really force it, did he? He just waited for White to do something wrong. That's all he did. And I think that would have been not the same way, but I think he would have put it on Joshua, did the right thing. White forced the pace, and Joshua would have cleaned him out early, I think. Or I think that was the question. That was the biggest thing. As Joshua lost his ball to commit. Well, he proved he hasn't, but he did take a bit long to get there. But White would have forced that early. So I think he would have got. I think it would have been a 3-4 round blowout.
Yeah, White would have forced it out of him, whereas with Helenius, he had to really find it himself. Didn't he?
He had to make himself do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to go back on something that you said probably about 10 minutes ago, where you said about he's got the stoppage, and look, I completely agree. That will do his confidence the world of good. Barry mentioned about the relationship between Joshua and Derek James. That will be reinforced by the stoppage win. Viral. Everyone would have seen the knockout on Sunday, but did it paper over the cracks? Does it kind of put a smokescreen over what we saw in the previous 6-7 rounds before then? Is there still concern from what we saw from Anthony Joshua up until that point, or does the knockout kind of render all of that obsolete in a way?
Well, I think the fact that he knocked him out the way that he did, it could well mean that the next time we see him, everything else is better. That he'll take everything to a high level just because the confidence is there, and maybe he will commit more with the jab and do all of the things we talked about. Prior to the stoppage, it wasn't much to get excited about. It was still quite tentative. He reached for that right hand a few times, as we mentioned, and he was pretty cautious. And to an extent, that's okay, because the only way that could really have gone wrong on Saturday would have been if he'd just been ridiculously reckless and gung-ho and walked onto something. So I can always understand why, at that level where you're someone like him and the stakes are always really high, it's just ridiculous to kind of give anything away. But yeah, I wasn't especially impressed by it. About halfway through the fight, I was thinking to myself, this next couple of rounds is absolutely huge for him now, because he has got to find something and knock this bloke out. Because if he doesn't, and we have another 12 rounds, then that really isn't a good sign. So I just thought, career-wise, almost, we're at a massive juncture here. And then he did what he did. There's still big questions to answer if you're going to get him with someone like Fury or Wilder, if it's Wilder next. Because having seen what he brought in that third fight against Fury, off the back of getting smashed to bits in the second one, we feel like we know what we'll get from Wilder. I guess we can't be completely sure, because that third fight will have taken something away from him, because it was a hellacious fight. And we've only seen him for a round since then, so we can't really tell too much from it. But I just feel like we'll get something like the Wilder in the third fight with Fury.
He knows he can get up. The second fight he got blasted out, didn't he? Beat up, and he didn't know what to do. The third fight, he got up and was willing to give it. No, he just thought, I'm not having this.
And he was dangerous all the way through to the end.
I think with Wilder knows what he's good at, and he does it, and he kind of backs himself. That's what I'm good at. This is how I know there was kind of changes to the way that he boxed.
Lost confidence in it since the defeat.
He'll always back himself to catch you with that right hand and knock you out. And I feel like,
and you can outbox him if you like. Good for you.
But eventually, as he always says,
is it all well? Good for you, Lewis Ortiz.
Yeah, that's what he says, doesn't he? You have to be perfect for 36 minutes, or have to be perfect for 1 second. But he still backs that and believes that, which is what I think where we've gone away from with Joshua. Something that you always say about add to your game for sure in different areas, but don't detract from what brought you here, what made you the fighter that you are.
I tell you what was clear for Joshua as well, and I didn't really talk about that Saturday night. He's worried about his tank emptying. You can see it. I think that's where
I thought that in a Pulev fight, but carry on.
You can see that's the comfortable part of it. He's not comfortable with what he's doing. I don't know why that is. Maybe he's always had that. We haven't really noticed it, but because I think it all comes from being confident in yourself, and that. Before, he was always just really sure, I'm going to knock you out. Even when he was willing to put the pressure on you. And he was never this, I don't say this again, I've said this a million times in my life. He was never this gung-ho, thoughtless, destroyer. He was always thinking about his work. But he always trying to wear you down. He always wanted to hurt you early. He always wanted to do that, let's say that. But now you can see he's wary of throwing too many punches, he's wary of making too many movements, because he's not comfortable. He doesn't know where he is. And I understand that. When you're if you're being like a reactive fighter, I used to be a reactive fighter, about dictating the pace. If you can train 100 miles an hour, if someone slows you down, you're knackered. Or if you're a nice slow boxer who likes to take your time to think, someone makes you rush your work, it tires you out. That's where Golovkin, Canelos and all those great fighters, they do with their front foot, tire you out, and you have to be reactive and you can't get your breathing right. Joshua feels like that even when he's the aggressor. That's what it looks like now. So he's throwing a shot and he's thinking, when he misses with the right hand, you can see him go, and he's thinking, I've got to be careful. Don't want to gas out. And you can see it and that's the worry. He has to believe in himself. Because he's doing it in the gym. I can throw. It's that nervous energy. Why don't you just say that? That nervous energy. You train like a lunatic. You're fit as a fiddle sometimes, and then the bell starts, and you go, I'm knackered already.
And
You
also,
ever play football? No, sorry, fuck me. Never played. Ever watch football? No, you play football. I don't play football. I play now and again. I'm useless, right? You play football. I'm fit. Even for my age, I'm fit. I can run all day. Those first 5 minutes are torture, isn't it? Just 10 minutes of pain. Like, you get used to it. It's that nervous energy, probably, maybe. But like the same in the ring, sometimes you go, I'm knackered, yeah? Once you're in the fight, even if you're tired, you don't think about it anymore. You just go through it. You go through the fight. I think he's in that stage. Like he needs to get rid of that nervous energy. You could see it. You could see it. It's like one of those horror ghost stories thing. You can see it all around him. That it emanates from him.
It's just, is it part of that wider problem of just overthinking kind of seemingly
his brain's getting in the way.
We've talked about, like, because we've had various different stages of Joshua in his career. It's literally something I just thought of now, where we've had, like, there was the obsession over how heavy is he going to be. Then it was, okay, the gas tank, which the Takam fight was kind of, and I remember, like, Joshua would weigh in for fights and there would be, like, hysteria over what he might weigh. Would he be
I remember that. I remember he stuck on some weight late on, probably because the opponent changed and he came in at 254, which was 18-2, which was,
and then he started blowing in the second half of that fight, didn't he? And I think that was where everybody's really started to talk about the gas tank. And then he kind of had like the version of him under Angel Fernandez and Joby Clayton, where he was talking about, loose 70s heavyweights and how he wanted to be this. And now he's with Derek James, who's a little bit more of a fundamental coach. And you just kind of feel like he's always, and not that fighters shouldn't look to add and change and develop and progress as careers go by, particularly as a heavyweight when you get knocked out. But it still feels like he's trying to fix something. And I'm not sure whether...
Like a really, really basic thing to say as well is that whilst all this has been going on, he's been getting older. Yeah. And that affects you.
Well, you can see it marking up easy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the skin, it's not as supple and as... resistant as it used to be. It loses its kind of elasticity and just all those kinds of things. And boxing's a very explosive sport, so as you get older, physically things get harder, things deteriorate once you get past the age of 30. If you're a clean athlete, that's just what happens. So trying to kind of change things, change your kind of like biorhythms in the ring, really, I think probably just gets more and more difficult to do as you get older.
You lose a bounce in your step, don't you?
For sure. And maybe just a bit counterproductive. I think Derek James, you've got to trust him. I mean, you look at the fighters that he's got, you've got to believe that he looks at Joshua and sees his most effective form and he knows what it is and what he wants it to be. And I think we did get a step of the way there on Saturday. I think we did. Physically, I mean, the first fight with Derek James, we could all get excited about it, the fact that it was a career heaviest. And then he was 250, wasn't he, for this one, which was the same as he was against Klitschko, actually. I'm looking through my notes and just spotting that and thinking it was like semi-interesting. But yeah, I guess you probably do just generally just keep a bit more weight on you as you get older, and it's something that no one's really kind of mentioned. But these fights we talk about, the previous incarnation of AJ, if you like, that kind of 2007, 6 years ago.
But I don't think so. I don't think anything's physical. With heavyweights, I think especially these big heavyweights now, just do the basics as best you can do them, and you're halfway there. More than halfway there. That's the truth of it. With the power they have, if he just learns, and he's got his basics, his structure is really good. Joshua, hands high, elbows tucked in tight. He punches inside his body frame, so he turns under every shot, which makes him clean to hit. And also he gets to the target quicker than some others. So he does things well. He's defensively quite sound when he's coming forward because his hands are high.
That little bounce you talked about, that's an age thing maybe.
He can't do that anymore. And he stopped doing that a long time ago as well. He tried to get it with Ruiz too, but then he can do that if... No, I never come off my balls on my feet. But then there's no power in my punches. And that's why I'm knocking people out.
So I did that against Ruiz in the rematch, and then the next fight was Pulev, where he kind of did a bit of both, didn't he? And he had him all over the place and hurt in the third round. And then back to what I mentioned there about noticeably the gas tank. After that, he was like, okay, well, he's not gone. But and then he waited 4 or 5 rounds after that.
It's not a physical problem with Joshua because he physically can do a lot of good things. It's all here. I'm sure of it. It's all in his head.
Yeah, no, I think
I think that's all it is. He just the belief in himself. I think he half believes in himself, and you can see him when he walks into the ring. He looks like a guy who's trying to go through almost like muscle memory. That cycle thing. That do I need to be angry, or do I need to sort of look like happy? He's trying to find something that's not there. Ultimately, what he says in interviews, I don't care what people think. I hope that's true.
Yeah, I do.
That'll help him. If he genuinely didn't care what people thought, he'll be a better person for it, a better fighter for it. Because then I think all those worried what people are saying, the crowd booing, and oh shit, fuck's sake. What can I do now? It's a pressure, and I've never experienced it, of course, and none of us would have. But it's all in his head. Everything's in his head. If he can get rid of all the thoughts and just focus on what he has to do.
I think one thing that really
electric shock treatment is what he needs.
I think one thing that really didn't help him when you think about the rebuild, losing to Ruiz, people accepted that that's the kind of thing that happens in boxing. Everybody was still very much with him at that point. He won the rematch, and stylistically, it wasn't what we were used to, but he got the win, and that was the most important thing.
He boxed really well, actually.
Yeah, Pulev, it looked like he was getting back towards kind of what we knew. But running into Usyk at the time that he did, given the kind of fighter that Usyk is, that was just a disaster for him, because he'd all of a sudden been posed a completely different question by someone who is exceptional. And I do feel like that second performance against Usyk will age well, Joshua's second performance against Usyk. But I just think he was just the worst possible person to get at the time he appeared.
But also the second fight against Ruiz, like, he boxed really well, and it was the right tactics to beat that guy. But that's it
was a short-term fix.
And also, I think it's kind of flattered him as well, because you got Ruiz in there who's 300 pounds or whatever he was. He didn't. Yeah, I think like that might have. It sounds like a harsh thing to say, giving him sort of a false sense of what he was as a fighter. Being able to box and move against that version of Andy Ruiz isn't.
But that was I think that was the time they opened his brain up, gave him loads of things, knowledge. He understood what you have.
And that's sort of what I'm saying. Afterwards, you got like I think Eddie said, well, if that was Tyson Fury, everyone was saying it's a masterclass, and we had the Ali comparisons and float like a butterfly AJ and all of that stuff. And just whether or not that was necessarily the right reception to that. Look, a great performance, and he had to show a lot of mental fortitude to get through that, considering he'd been stopped. But it was an Andy Ruiz who was pulled out of the nearest bar. But
by the way, he almost knocked Ruiz out in the first fight, by the way. He got caught with a shot in the temple, I think it was, and he unravelled. So what he should have really done is stuck to his guns and gone out and stopped him, which he could have in the second fight. I think he could have gone out and stopped him. I think you take the risk, you get caught again, you unravel again. I don't know, but I mean, okay, Lennox Lewis was mentioned in the broadcast, me and Tony Bellew.
Shout out Tony Bellew.
Yeah, mate. I love him. Actually, really nice bloke. No, generally isn't. I'm not just saying that. He absolutely. He gets those.
Yeah, we love.
He's great. We do love Bellew. He's a real top bloke.
Soft spot for Bellew.
But he and David here as well. He was still saying, but like Lennox Lewis, when he got Rahman back again, he did a job on him. He had to do the job on him. He couldn't just win. You had to win. You had to beat him. You had to beat him up. You had to knock him out. That was the difference, I think. And I think if that was Josh would have done that, he might have been a different fighter. Because even when he got to Pulev, I remember doing little bits for Sky and saying before that, and saying, it's still, this is an important fight for him, because it's a winnable fight. Because Pulev's not the fight that he was, but it's how he approaches it. Because in Ruiz too, he looked like a guy who was really conscious about getting hit, really wary about getting hit, and we don't want to see that. Because because you train heavyweights are trained different and acting different to any other weight, and there's a fear factor of getting knocked out, because anyone can knock you out in that weight division because they're massive. Yeah. But if you have a clear, obvious wariness of getting hit, that's a problem. Unless you're an elusive fighter like an Ali, who again never had any problem with getting hit, he had one of the best chins in boxing, but or Tyson Fury, in his more negative days. Looked like he was vulnerable getting one of the whiskers, but he had the guile and the intelligence to think on his feet to make you miss. Joshua is obviously a student. That's what everyone tells us. He's a student. He listens and he does what he's told in the gym, but he can't think on his feet like they can. That's not a slight on him. Some of us can, some of us can. Some of us can adapt to fight, some of us can't. That's how you're built. It's part of your magic or the lack of it. And he doesn't have that. He has other attributes. He has other strengths, other bits of magic, but they're taken away if he's not going route one. Go route one. There you go. I didn't fucking say that in the first place. Just go route one. Hands high, right? Try and get a bit of a bounce if you can, but try and learn to slide in with the jab rather than bouncing. Double jab your way in all the time. Double jab's a safe punch. See, if you keep your hands out like he does and you punch correctly and you stay and you get a little bit lower, so when you throw the shot, you're like this and you're protected. Yeah. And this hand's here, you can get hit. It's impossible to block every shot when you're throwing punches, but you're safer than most others, especially at that division where they're the lumping shots over the top, or when you punch, because you're stepping in, you're a fear factor straight away. First thing they'll do is that. And then you got him, then you step in quite, you got to learn to stab with that front foot. The foot's got to go quick. And then you're in there, then go bam, and hit him anywhere, for God's sake. We say this all the time, no? Yeah. Just hit him anywhere. Make him feel the power straight away in the first round, bam, poof. And then they'll try, and then do it again really quickly. That's what I would just say, they do it again really quickly. The same technique, because these are big guys, they can't think that. Not all of them can think that quickly. Do it again straight away, and make them reactive. Then all of a sudden, then your mindset's different. You're the bully again now, like you used to be.
I was just about to say that's what he used to do. He used to hit you early, get you in your box, and then dictate from there.
And then he would box, and he would relax, and he would box really well, and take his time, and he'd wait for his right moment, and he was a real joy to watch, and he can be again. I think the landscape of the division's changed a little bit now, so he might never get to where he was at the very top, but I think he can be better than he is. Which is a great sign, by the way. That's positive. He can be better than what he is.
We're going to try and get through. We've got a few questions here. Does Rob use a volumizer on his beard? No. Just all of the synthetic testosterone that I have knocking around the house. We are going to move on to a hot topic in the chat. Remember, guys, please hit the like button. There's almost 600 of you in here at the minute, and we don't even have 100 likes. That means like 1 out of 6 of you only like it, and the rest of you is terrible. It's not looking good. But anyway, Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua. Now, it feels like we're in 2017 again because we keep hearing about it, Andy. Yet we don't have a date. We don't have a poster. I thought Eddie Hearn's comments after the fight were very telling, where he kind of went, "Well, it's up to skill challenge, but we've got other options. We've got this, got that." It was far from the kind of the rallying cry that made me think the fight is next. But for argument's sake, and let's just say boxing sorts its shit out for one night and one night only, and we get Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua next. Is that the right fight for AJ next, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it probably is, because I don't see how he's going to fight Fury next, although that is what I prefer, because it's a much bigger fight for us in the UK. But I think in a way the emergence of Saudi as a player, and with the funds that they've got, it's kind of helped and hindered the heavyweight division. It's kind of helped because they've got the money to be able to pay everyone and get these fights together, but it's also hindered because nobody wants to do anything unless it's in Saudi for massive money. That's the problem, isn't it?
Good point, actually.
That's come with it. That seems to be what they're plotting, and therefore the most realistic thing. Because I don't think anybody wants to see him fight Usyk again. Anthony, I think that's fair to say. So yeah, I think it probably is, because he's only interested in that top end. And I mean, I would make Wilder a strong favourite in that fight, and I think anybody would, because I think he's just still what he's always been. And the debate we've just been having about where Joshua is mentally and the things he's had to do and is still having to do to get back to where he was. Wilder showed us in that third Fury fight that he never left, did he? It never wavered. Maybe it did, but on the night it certainly didn't. And I think that's what we can expect to see from him until the moment he hangs up his gloves. Because if you're not going to question yourself and be a different person in the ring after that second fight, after what happened to him in the second fight, it's not going to happen.
Same question to you, Barry. Is it the right fight next for Anthony Joshua?
Who knows? I think he has to take it. I'd like to see him have another fight, just to see if that finish gives him the confidence. But you have to make him a massive underdog. I can't see how he beats him. I mean, he can do that to anybody, of course. But is he going to do that with Wilder swinging in those crazy long reach that he has, those long shots from the offset, which he will do, Wilder, by the way. If one thing Wilder does, he commits to his attacks still.
And Wilder will look at that version of Joshua and really fancy it.
So I'm jumping on him early, yeah. So, and also he showed decent stamina, hasn't he? What's his name? That's the tall fella. But I think that's where Joshua needs another fight to see if that confidence is giving that finish is genuinely giving him the confidence that I think he needs to go forward. But also,
who would you recruit for that if you could, if you were going to make that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard, isn't it?
It is difficult
because also you don't want him to get beat.
That's it.
Well, if he gets,
that's why McKean was perfect, wasn't he?
If he gets beat, then all of a sudden, then that fight's gone. Maybe for good, maybe not, because he's such a big name. It's never gone for good in that division, but it's lost its shine dramatically. So yeah, this is the pot of gold that they'll offer. He has to take it. He'd be a fool not to. But I think it's a leap of faith there that he can do what he did Saturday, but try and do it quicker against a guy who's going to be really gunning for you. Again, and it's not like a wide fight who forces you to fire, because he can fire from long range. Wilder. I guess I don't know. He has to take it, doesn't he? I can't see what else he could do. But ideally, no. The thing is, they won't fight. He should fight next month. That wasn't a grueling fight for him. No, he should not. He should fight in October and then box in January.
That's what he said, and he said he wants to box another 2 times before the end of the year.
Well, that's not going to happen, is it? But
no.
They only box one more time. That's the truth. But
that'd be great, though.
I'd like to see it. He should do. 20 years ago, that he would have boxed in October again, and then had enough time to get prepared for January. There would have been plenty, of course. As long as he's not in a grueling hard fight and gets any injuries. That's another thing. Well, if he gets injured, he's out of the game then for 6 months, 7 months, and in this day and age, that means nothing to it. But I mean, he might be out of the game, and then they go in another direction. He doesn't get his opportunity.
Fights Ruiz and gets beat or whatever. But boxing's a funny old.
So when that sort of, then you're talking about guys.
Wouldn't it be ironic? Sorry, by the way, that the time that we were going to get Joshua versus Wilder in 2018, Ruiz put pay to that. Or 2019, yeah, it was 2018. Put pay to that, and then if they were to do it again, Ruiz upsets the apple cart on the other side of things.
But and we're talking about guys who are already multimillionaires. Yeah. But this is different. This is different gear money, isn't it? This is not. You're not talking about 20 million, which is crazy money for the rest of us normal people.
It's like $60 million.
Exactly.
It's
just.
Well, yeah, that's kind of where I think reading between the lines of what you've said, Andy, and obviously what you've said there, Barry, I think we'd all probably agree that from a sporting perspective, he needs a fight, maybe 2 fights before Wilder. But it is a business, and it always has been. It's not something that's just recently popped up. But he would be. Yeah, foolhardy, I think is the right word, to turn down $50-60 million at this stage of his career to take any fight, let alone a Deontay Wilder fight, which would be a massive fight, of course. But
and I wouldn't be saying that he definitely couldn't beat him, because he could beat him. I mean, it could happen. He for me, he would be a big underdog, but it could happen. And with Wilder as well, he's had 1 round since that epic against Fury, which by the time January comes around will be 2.5 years ago. That's a long time. He's getting older. That kind of length of time out of the ring, it never looks like he gets out of shape, obviously. I think he's got one of those metabolisms where he just burns calories like jet fuel, Wilder, because he's always the same, isn't he?
He's naturally very slender,
he's always the same. But it's still 1 round in 2.5 years. He still won't have won. Well, when would have been the last time he won? It would have been
Luis Ortiz, November 2019. Yeah, November 2019.
Yeah, so that's a long time ago.
I've said the blowout against Helenius. It's something that we've spoken about in the past, and when we've kind of spoken about Joshua Wilder. I'm still, what you've said there, Andy, I'm still very intrigued to see Deontay Wilder, if indeed it goes 3 or 4 rounds, in rounds 3, 4, 5, 6 of a fight after that, particularly the third Fury fight, where he put all of that weight on and took a real hammering, I think, because of it. Exactly. I think the 215, 217 Wilder may have kind of gone a bit earlier than he ended up going in that.
But that's what I was referring to earlier, is that, I think we know that mentally that ability to commit and be completely fearless will always be there, but physically he's got to have left a big piece of himself in that T-Mobile ring, hasn't he? I mean, there's just no other way.
Yeah, and on the back of another...
He got knocked out through sheer exhaustion. And they're like any kind of like neurologist or doctor or whatever will tell you, they are the worst ones. If you get sparked in round 1 with one you don't see, then mentally that can be a bit difficult to get over. But physically it's not that bad, weird though that may sound. But the 11th round, when you basically get knocked out because you just haven't
your body stops working.
That's
essentially.
But
it was also, by the way, sorry, bro. It was on the back of 18 months of inactivity from the second fight, which was also a real torrid affair as well.
Well, that was worse. That was the fight I thought would have broken the second fight, but he never. I think that's what's it. Mentally as well. He knows that he can come back. He knows he has that resolve to dig in
and that's
deep.
huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it is huge. Yeah, it's huge. And even though he didn't get the results, because that second fight he crumbled. He just crumbled totally. Like, because Fury just took the whole game away from him. Did what he said he would do, which no one thought he was going to do, and went at him. And he didn't. And Wilder just didn't have a clue what to do. He was lost. He looked lost, and he looked and knew that the finish was just like, oh, he'll never be the same again. He'll never fight. I didn't think he'd fight again, to be honest. That he just lost. I remember saying about him and Usyk fight. I said Usyk would have him crying in the ring. He'll quit. Usyk making quit. I don't believe that now. I still think Usyk would beat him because I think he's so clever, but. I mean, Wilder's shown that he does have plenty of grit.
Yeah, incredible toughness.
The bully could be knocking everyone out, haven't he? Even the first fight with Fury, you can argue he knocked him out, and Fury just got up. Yeah. Fury was just one of those.
He was so close to winning.
Iconic moments,
to winning that trilogy, to winning 2 of those fights.
And even that fight, by the way, I thought he was getting totally outboxed. I thought on my card, but he didn't stop trying for the whole fight. But he wasn't getting hurt. That's I would say that. But in that last fight against, and the second fight, you got hurt and beat up. Sorry, mate. Oh, look at that. Can we start again? Look, I've messed up.
That's all right.
Magazine.
Shout out Boxing News. Okay. Get your subscriptions. Go down. Sorry, I'll do the plug anyway.
I don't subscribe.
You better subscribe. Anyway, come on.
But it's too expensive. It's like a 50p a magazine or something. But it's if you get a year annually, it's a lot cheaper.
There you go. There you go. So
just like DAZN.
link in the bio to Boxing News, not DAZN. But anyway, you were saying, bro.
So I don't know what I was saying. But in the third fight, things weren't going his way. He kept plugging away. I think that I think he's mentally tough. I didn't think he was after that second fight. So yes, even though there might be miles on the clock, but he won't have a secondary thought about, oh shit.
No, that won't be there.
And I think that's what Joshua still has.
Yeah. And he'll always have that power, won't he?
Yeah.
Until he's 85
Joshua
years
has that,
old.
but Joshua has that, doesn't he? That little like, oh shit, I'm blowing you, and all shit.
Yeah.
What if he hits you and you? No, I don't want to get caught here. I don't want to get caught. This is not right. You're waiting too long.
No,
we've seen like both sides of it from Wilder. We've seen Wilder on the end of a hammering and still want more, and we've seen Wilder exhausted to where he can barely lift his hand, but he still wants more.
But just the inactivity and all of that, you got to think about it.
Absolutely, for sure. I do make Wilder a favourite in that fight, but I certainly don't write Joshua off in any stretch.
I also thought Joshua would beat Wilder.
I remember we used to say it, didn't we? I remember,
more direct
we have a question from the very, very patient Dom King. He's been very patient. He's in his 90s now, and he's still waiting for us to ask the question. Will Joshua have more success against Wilder if Wilder is on the back foot or if Wilder is the aggressor? Going to go to our technical expert, Mr. Barry Jones.
Well, Andy would argue that was him. Well, I think he gets ultimately more success if Wilder comes at him, to be honest. We've seen against Helenius, how Helenius leaning back and moving, and using that reach, that Joshua struggled to close the distance. That's evident. So, you just tend to think that Joshua allowed to move forward all the time. I still think he's, the way he is at the minute, I think he needs you to stand in front of him. So there's a bigger risk that with Wilder going forward, there's a bigger risk and a bigger worry you're going to get knocked out. But against the whole thing, I think that'll force you to fire. I feel so. I think you'll have more success with Wilder coming forward. You got more chance to get knocked out, of course, as well. But I think with that, there's the caveat with that is I do think he has to fire back. So I think you'll want Wilder to come at him. Unless he does the stupidest thing, I think he can outbox Wilder from outside, which I think he's technically a better boxer than Wilder, but I think he'll get knocked out if he tries to outbox him.
I just wouldn't rule that out. I wouldn't rule out him thinking that he can do that.
Yeah,
if that fear of engaging is still there, then he might try and do that. Even it probably wouldn't be what Derek James would recommend, but you've got no control once he walks up the steps, have you? And I could see that. If that fear is still there, I could see him trying that.
It's an interesting one, isn't it?
So you wanted to come at you, like you got to try and meet him in the middle and force him to fire at you. And then, see, Joshua takes a step back. He did it on Saturday. Takes a step back. That's the right thing, to make the punches fall short. You fire off that, but then you've got a bigger guy with a long reach. You might have to go 2 steps. But Joshua was going step, step, step. So you're going so far back that any pressure you put on Helenius was all the pressure you put on him with your feet just wasted your time, because like there's a big gap in between them. There's a safe space. That gap between you and the opponent is everything. That's your intimidation factor. That's your safe space. That's where you get all your work done. That little gap here, and if you control that gap, you control the fight. So moving your feet in and out is a sensible thing, but you got to go no more than 2. I say quite often about, especially big guys, any more than 2 steps back, and you got to pivot. Yes,
there he goes.
I joke. That's how you do.
It took us over an hour to get there. That must
but
be
you have to move off, because the 3rd step back takes all the pressure off the other guy you were trying to put pressure on. He feels relieved now, or he can close your gap then and put you under pressure. So step and pivot, or 1 step and pivot, and that's if he does that against him like Wilder, then Wilder hasn't got great technique. Wilder's feet are not fantastic, so he has a massively wide stance, so he can't adjust his feet quickly. He goes boom boom swing. Now he might swing, he might catch you when you move over because he swings. But if you pivot and go low, so you got a bit of a wide stance. You take the step back to make him fall a bit short or make him advance. Then you twist. Then you take that spin around, that pivot around the side. You go Wilder where you want him, I think. So you want him to come at you for that reason alone. But you haven't got that bounce anymore. But if you can feint and slide and then take step back and smaller steps, but 2 little steps back, and then go to the side, he's got Wilder here going. And Wilder's like, he's mad with his feet. His feet are squared up, and he'll come to small left hook. But you're there, so he can't adjust his feet because with Wilder, his hands move his feet. Not making any sense?
Yeah.
The pure momentum of his body moves his feet forwards sometimes because he commits to a shot and his technique is quite crude. With that, if you can get on either side of him, gives you a free shot. Yeah. If Joshua can go step and move to his right. Yes, that's great. I gotta get take a shit tonight. Then he got the left hook, and Joshua's got a fantastic there. I mean, literally, if he takes a real sharp and big arc of a pivot, so a bigger step, and you're going like this around you, he's literally on the side of him, being able to go whack right. Like you got like a target there. Wilder's facing there, and you're going bam right on his face. It makes sense to me. I don't know if
it does make sense. In a strange way. It
makes sense.
The shot that I'm thinking of is Chris Billam-Smith versus Lawrence Okoli, where he kind of takes the half step back, finds himself on the other side, and then he's facing the wrong way and hits him with a left hook round the side. We've got a super chat here, so we're going to answer the super chat. Well, it's not really a question, but it's more a statement from WM Boxing. Super duper chat, Barry.
What's that?
This is when we have a normal chat and we want another chat. The WBA put us. No, sorry. Anyway, AJ will be the hardest puncher Wilder has been in with. Wilder will get the shock of his life when AJ lands a right hand, says WM Boxing Views. Andy, going to come to you.
That's not impossible. That it's really not, and that's why I don't write him off by any stretch. I mean, we've been through the reasons why we make Wilder a strong favourite, and I stick with them. But he's definitely got a chance in this fight, and that is an accurate statement. Joshua would be the biggest puncher he's come up against. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And if he can land on him, then he could knock him out.
Yeah, I agree. He is the biggest, but it depends on what version of Joshua turns up. I would say, if Joshua gets in range and throws that right hand or that left hook, then yeah, you're in trouble. But if he's doing it from out here, and not getting the judgment of the distance correct, and throwing some of those right hands he threw against Franklin, which were good shots, but they weren't the Helenius shot or others we've seen in the past, then he could take them all day. Well, not take them all day, but I mean they wouldn't be the biggest punches he's taken in his career. I'd say that much. But Joshua correctly, if he gets in range and punches through the target, then yeah, I don't think Wilder would have felt a punch like it.
It's interesting. I'd be interested to see how Joshua does approach that fight, because I think some of Wilder's biggest knockouts have come with him on the back foot, where he's just edging back and then explodes forward. The Artur Szpilka knockout was probably his biggest knockout.
Time in that fight.
Yeah.
Sometimes in fights,
it seems like everyone's having a hard time until he's having a hard time until they're not.
He finds himself struggling, and the opponent maybe gets a little bit overconfident, and starts to take a few more risks than maybe they should, and then all of a sudden it's over.
And that's what you want him to. That's you almost want it. It's crazy. You want to invite the guy who can punch like him coming forward, because more power with forward momentum on the shots. But his shots are all whips, so he can throw from any angle because he's just crazily long, and his legs are always wide. By the way, so
he has that torque in his shots.
Yeah, he also has a good base because his legs are so wide. But I mean, but if you go at him, you can't go at him square on. You got to go at him from a different angle. I think that's important. So that's why if you get him come onto you, you can change the angle. When you go back, it's easier to change the angle when you go back because you take the step with your back foot. That makes your feet a bit wider. Then you can put pressure on your front foot to pivot around. So it's easier doing that in retreat than it is going forward. I would say that much. You can still do it forward, but you got to really go when you're orthodox. You do it more foot, but you really only got to go to the right. Then it's easier to step across. It's harder to step this way if you want to throw punches. But when you come back, it's easier to sort of spin onto your left. This is how I feel. So I've got for me. But so you want that because you go forward to with Wilder, like I said, if you go straight at him in straight lines, you think you got him, you fire it forward like that. Fury could do it because he's just long. Fury might not be as tall, but I think he has just maybe a longer reach. Fury got a massively long reach for longer than what his body really should be. That's crazy enough. And Joshua's is just a normal reach of 80 inches or whatever.
Normal reach of a giant, yeah.
No, so what I mean, but he's more structural. He'll step with his punches, but I think he'll want Wilder to come at him. I think that's for sure, and then move off like that. So I think it's a danger for him. But if he can punch correctly and get in range to throw the shots, I think Wilder could be in trouble.
So, Saqib Rafiq, who's decided to put Twitter down for 5 minutes, or X or whatever it's called, says, I propose AJ versus Barry Jones for the WBA Super Chat Championship. This is why we don't take your questions, Saqib. It's all right, we like Saqib. Saqib's okay. But anyway, let's move on. Do we have any more questions related to Wilder, Joshua? You know Saqib. You've shared many a space with Saqib.
No, not him.
Oh, what? But batter who? Joshua or Wilder?
Put him near Joshua.
That's all right. If the money's there,
I'm not going to fight him. I wouldn't mind fighting him.
Okay, we're going to try and get
a
a few questions in here before we move on. Don King, only in America, says, does Joshua hit harder than Fury or even Luis Ortiz? I don't think so, he says.
Oh, he does, if he gets it right. I think he does.
Barry?
I think statistically he does. But again, it's what shot does the damage. Is Ruiz a massively puncher for the division? But if he hits you on the tempo with speed and accuracy, then you're all over the place, aren't you? So, it's quite subjective. That I think, statistically, he's a harder puncher than all of them. But what works for you is that the power. Some people can't take the weight of the shot. Some people, it's the unexpected whip of the punch. Wilder has both. But I think so I would say yes. But listen, Fury hits you right and gets you fast enough with his speed and the angles he hit you at, then you're not going to know where you are.
Question coming in. Can we get to Navarette Valdez now? We'll get there eventually. But before we do, it's time to take a little look at the undercard from this past weekend on Saturday. I can feel just the energy in the room dipping and being sucked out of anyone. But one of the we kind of spoke about it. Yeah, there we go. We spoke about it on the way here, Andy, where I said sometimes you can get an undercard that you look at and that's a good fight. Oh, that should catch fire. And then sometimes it doesn't. For whatever reason on the night, the undercard, let's say on paper, but fights aren't fought on paper. I think, from my personal opinion, that this past weekend wasn't one of those cards that we look at and go, oh, that should be great. And it still didn't perform up to the expectations that we had. Do you think that's fair to say, Andy?
Yeah, I do actually. I didn't see too much of Campbell Hatton. I kind of called it towards the end,
really good.
And it was a decent performance, but it wasn't one to really get your pulse racing. Johnny Fisher I thought was good against Harry Armstrong because, particularly after the start he had, where he threw an awful lot of punches in the first round because it looked like he might be able to finish the fight, and then when he didn't,
he takes a good shot at Harry Armstrong.
Oh, doesn't he? And I remember thinking, when this could get interesting if it goes into the second half because Armstrong's more experienced and that kind of thing. But then he did manage to stop him, and I thought that was pretty impressive actually. Hrgović continues to underwhelm, and I think that in general he has as a pro. I saw him a lot in the amateurs. And I just don't see a way in which he beats, the top fighters in that division, which is obviously what everybody wants to do. I thought Dempsey McKean did quite impressed with him, actually. I thought for somebody who's not really boxed at that high level, I thought he did pretty well, and that he would see the final bell, and he'll be upset that he didn't, because he just got caught right towards the end. And then Chisora against Washington was kind of, the point.
The longest 10 rounds of
yeah,
my life,
the point we were making in the build-up on TalkSport, who I was with on Saturday, is that an even match makes for a good fight, or at least it can do. It doesn't really matter. It's a bit strange to have a fight of that kind of level as a chief support to Anthony Joshua. I think that's a fair comment.
Yeah, for sure.
But that doesn't mean that it can't still be a good fight. But I wasn't really sure what to make of it, to be honest, because Washington just didn't really... Washington could have won that fight if he'd wanted to, couldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it was almost... Early on, he's got Chisora kind of rushing him in that way that Derek does, and he backed up and then threw a right hand, and it's almost like accidentally he'd done the right thing, created a bit of space and caught him on the way in. And then he did it for a bit, and then he stopped doing it, and then he did it for a bit at the end, and Chisora won on points.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So you get paid the big bucks.
But that's what happened.
And
Malik Scott, after you lads might not have heard this, but we got into the corner because we took the corner sound at different times, and which was quite interesting, because every time we went there was just loads of swearing, which they kind of moved away from corner sound on TalkSport for a while because of the swearing. And then I remember the first time we did it a few months ago, the first time we got back, it was just like the air went blue. But Malik Scott said to him after 6 or 7 rounds, just quite gently, what are we doing here? Do you want to just kind of swallow it like everybody sort of expects you to and be that guy? Or did you want to actually just try a bit harder and we can win? And it nearly worked, because what he did from that point onwards was try in the final 20 seconds or 30 seconds of a round. It was... Yeah, it's not like we had sky-high expectations for it, but it was just quite an odd watch.
Yeah,
I think of the zone then.
What's that?
Sky high.
There we go. Yeah, it's always the subliminal Sky marketing machine is in full effect here on the boxing show. Barry, going to come to you really. We're going to start on Chisora versus Washington, and we're not going to go on for too much past that, because we do have a brilliant fight to talk about in Navarette Valdez. But it seemed to me that was the worst version of what it could have been.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, it was. It was like, gotta give Chisora his credit. That was it. Job done. But he looks like he's wobbling all over the place, but he continues to come forward. Innately tough. I'm not going to say he should retire. We all know he should retire.
We've been saying it for such a long time.
You see him now, his eyes, and he doesn't look like he's the full ticket anymore. He might be, right? Sometimes that could just be cosmetic, but there's a worry. Every time he gets hit, he does wobble a bit, but he keeps coming forward. But Washington could have won that fight loads of times, I felt, but he had no ambition. Again, the guy, and they made a point in the commentary. I was ringside. I had the earpiece in, saying, Andy Lee, I think it was, saying, when you start boxing late, you just don't know what to think. And he didn't quite say this, but that's what he meant. You just don't know what to think on your feet. You can't adapt when you come into boxing late. So you've done it from a young age. Like a Fury's a fine example. He thinks on his feet all the time, because you've done it from a day dot, from a baby. So the longer you've done it for, the more comfortable you are in any situation. Washington's come to boxing quite late, I think, and he's in his 40s now. He's just 41. Yeah, so he can just do what he can do, and his engine's never been great anyway, and so he had no ambition. That's the way he had no ambition, like he did. Like he almost like he didn't want to win.
To me,
he was the right winner.
It looked like he was stuck in that sparring partner mentality of where he's just happy to do the rounds. And it's all kind of a little bit light and
punch.
Yeah,
but I'm not here to land too many.
Pretty much, yeah.
But
I want to be invited back.
But
so
you know what?
it was that.
Yeah. That's you shouldn't be saying this. These are the fights that Derek needs now. If he wants to get the 50, he's had 3 fights or whatever left or something. If he wants to get the 50 fights, I think that's what he said. Then 3 more Washingtons would be great for him.
We get the rematch on the
actually,
Wilder
that's a really fair point. It's just that if he's going to keep going, then that was a kind of responsible match to make.
But that's someone else's limelight. someone else.
Yeah.
And also, that's a co-main. Sorry, Barry. That's a co-main to what was a pay-per-view show until a week before as well.
True.
And also, like that's another kids with ambition.
Yeah.
Who's not earning no money. They might not get. They won't get paid as much as Derek. Good luck doing for whatever he gets out of that. But I mean, who will do anything to give him that opportunity to shine at that high on a platform like that, on a big occasion, on a chief support.
Yeah, Fabio
Joshua
Wardley would have loved that slot, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I'm sure.
For
example.
And we all get a more competitive fight that we want to see at a higher level for less money. By the way, it would be cheaper for everyone involved. But listen, heavyweights rule the boxing world, so that's how it works. But it wasn't a great watch, but then it was predictably not a great watch. And I don't see any Chisora fight being a great watch because he hasn't got the acceleration to really put it on anyone anymore. He fights in bursts, but even they're quite slow. And if it's anything of a remotely exciting fight, it would be him getting beat up. And we don't want to see that anymore. I don't know Derek from Adam. I joke about. I know I was going about. I want to fight him so I can sue him for all his money. But genuinely, I have empathy for every fighter. I don't want to see. I'm not interested in watching him getting bashed to pieces. I'm not out there for that. Well, what are we? Animals? We're barbaric, isn't it? Like, who wants to see that for? I'll go watch the UFC. No, I mean, cause that looks. I mean, that's all technique, but I mean, that looks when they hit them on the floor like that. Yeah. I go, whoa. I love boxing. I don't want to see people get knocked out. It's the best thing in the world watching that. It's great. But straight away, your thought is, shit, I hope he's okay. Hope she's okay. And that, every time he takes a punch, Derek, you go, oh. Every punch he takes.
Yeah, there was a few more than a few occasions where he was visibly buzzed.
Yeah, and non-huge shots. I would say, like every time you get, ooh.
Sort of like Andy said, where they're almost thrown out of kind of, well, I'm supposed to throw here. Oh God, we just never seen that. But yeah, I think we do a pretty good job on. I mean, we had a similar-ish conversation, 2 very different careers with Errol Spence after the Crawford fight. You never kind of want to suggest anything, and ultimately fighters have sacrificed so much of their life, and it's up to them what they do, and they're grown men, but not just grown men, but fighters as well. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't want to see it anymore from a sense of, what are we doing here? What's the end goal here? Okay, to get to 50 fights would be a tremendous achievement, but how much is that potentially going to take out of him? These last 3 fights could be.
Yeah, they could be, but it's his decision, and if he's going to do it, then you just want to see some responsibility taken with the matchmaking.
But then are we going to get a responsibility taken with the matchmaking, and it's going to be co-main to a pay-per-view show or a big show? Because,
no, it shouldn't be.
Because Chisora's not going to box for 40 grand and open the show, is he? That's the problem.
This is another instance where, the emergence of the Saudi money has maybe become a little bit of a problem because they paid for that fight, as far as I understand.
Yeah, I mean, he's missed the skill challenge, isn't he?
I think they did. I mean, I think they funded it to a large extent.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all. He's the sole director of skill challenge promotions or skill challenge.
He said at the press conference, turned around and in typical Chisora fashion put it on Eddie and said, "You didn't want me on this card. I'm here because Skills Challenge and Prince Khaled basically paid for it."
What's Chisora again? What is he?
What do you mean?
What, is he the sole?
He's the sole director of skill challenge promotions in the UK.
I thought he was brilliant. Like, I think long may his. Well, listen, if he doesn't care about his health, why should I?
Well, that is the ultimate kind of thing.
I think you're fantastic. Keep going on, mate. Crack on.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you got any work on any of those?
Exactly.
Yeah. but yeah,
got a bit of shorts.
It's one of those conversations where it can end up going in all sorts of different directions because. Yes, ideally, we would like him to retire, but it is up to him. And ultimately, we're watching a sport where, ideally, I suppose, no one would do it at all. But they do.
Yeah.
And we all enjoy watching it. And no, I didn't enjoy watching that on Saturday particularly. And I definitely don't want to see him on the end of something like he was against Tyson Fury, not that long ago. But...
I mean, to think he was Tyson Fury's last defence of his title is a real sobering thought.
It is. It is. If he's going to continue, that's up to him. But just proper matching, responsible matching, and not as a chief support.
Yeah, I think that was kind of one of the more... I think I had like a moment, I don't know what time it was by the time the main event came out, 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was. And I was sitting there thinking like, up until this point, this is what people would have been paying for. Like the Chisora-Washington fight being as a co-main event. And I understand Chisora, the profile and what he would have been earning and what have you.
Is he still a big draw though? Is he? Maybe he might still be. I don't know.
I don't really know. I mean,
I don't think so.
Boxed at the O2 enough, but I mean, people are there for Joshua, aren't they? Like people weren't keeping their tickets going, well, I know Joshua White's off, but I really want to watch Chisora versus Washington. Like that wasn't happening. But anyway, we're going to move on because we've got one more fight on that card that I do want to briefly touch upon, and that is Filip Hrgović, the IBF mandatory challenger who scored a 12th round knockout, TKO win over Dempsey McKean. Kind of felt like a lot of Filip Hrgović performances where you just get the sense that, well, I don't know. Do we get the sense that he has a few more gears to go, or are those gears just not there anymore, and that's just him now?
I think that's him.
I say with it, he doesn't want to lose. I mean, he doesn't want to win. He doesn't want to lose more than he wants to win. If that makes any understand that
completely.
He has no ambition in his, and I sort of half understand that because I was a bit scared to get hit and throw punches, but I mean, at some point you got to get a little bit of accelerate something. It's like he needs a rocket up his backside. He's technically quite good, but he just does the same thing all the time. And I thought he beat Dempsey McKean. I always thought he would beat him because McKean makes mistakes and he's got better structure to his work. I thought the technique would work, and it did. But he doesn't up the pace, doesn't change anything, does the same thing round after round. Yeah. It's monotonous.
It's frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, it's frustrating. And just the pace he fights at, like, no, this is what I do.
Because watching that, you know, he got him in trouble, didn't he, quite early in the fight, in about the third or something like that. And then you're looking at it and thinking to yourself, we need to see him click through the gears.
Go now.
But then he lets it drift. And then McKean started to do okay, actually, in the middle rounds. And then he got a little bit of confidence, which probably wasn't the best thing for him in retrospect. And then Hrgović caught him again in the 9th, and you're thinking, right, finish it. And then he didn't. But all right, then he did in the final round. But there's a couple of times there where you're just thinking, come on.
Yeah. And also, I know Dempsey was unbeaten and not a bad fighter, but you know the quality they've boxed as a pro, Hrgović is fab greater, and also his pedigree as an amateur.
Yeah, the WSB and
it gives him so much more of a grounding. And even though on paper it was an evenly matched fight, there was a huge favourite in that fight, and it was Hrgović, and it was all about how he conducted himself. And this was an opportunity for him to sell himself a little bit more as a genuine world title contender. Now you're just thinking, do I want, because of where he's from as well, unfortunately, there's probably not a huge market for professional boxing. Or would you sell him? No. You can sell Usyk from his brilliance and also his reign as a cruiserweight. Anywhere around the world, because he did globe trot around the world, battering everybody at the weight below, moved up a weight then and getting done the same on the road. It's not destructive fashion, but it's impressive fashion. And he's not. So this, are you going to sell this guy? Well, he's pretty good. He's technically sound, but he's not going to go. He's not going to get out of third gear for anybody unless you force him. But at some point, you've got to show I can do it. Or the guy who's trying to. Or next time, his next fight will be a guy who will force it out you, but it'll be Wilder and he knocks you out.
Well, you think about all the problems that he had with Zhile Zhang for 3 or 4 rounds, and then Zhang's gas tank fell off a cliff like it often does, and he was able to bring himself back into the fight. But if he's against someone who could sustain his work, he loses that fight. Surely he loses that fight.
The Zhang who boxed Joyce, that Zhang who looked much more energetic, then Hrgović is. There's an argument to say Hrgović lost the first fight, of course.
Of course.
I mean, he clearly loses that first fight. He clearly loses it, without a doubt. Just if Zhang just punches in really sparse spurts.
Yeah, it was a very frustrating performance. I put a tweet out, I think, after 4 or 5 rounds and said, now it'd just be nice to see him go through the gears. And I had a load of replies saying he doesn't have any gears. And then that was literally what we saw for the rest of the fight. Yeah. And it's so frustrating because one of the things that he doesn't have a jab. Everything with the lead hand is just pouring to set up the right hand downstairs or the right hand to the head. There's no jab at all.
Or round the back of the head.
Yeah, well, round the back of the head. Loves a rabbit punch.
The amateur game did that. When that computer scoring thing did that, didn't it, for a while? I think the jab's coming back in the amateur game now. It has for a while, to be fair. But I mean, he might have just caught the end of that generation where it was all that wanding. It was all about hitting this shot. And so that's the problem with that. But I think
yeah, actually, he would have done because they changed back to the 10-point must in kind of like autumn 2013, and he wound up after Rio. So the last 2.5, 3 years, he had he had 10-point must, but prior to that, yeah, he would have had computer points.
Jab's everything. Like, I mean, it's just people say it like, oh, you know, jab take him on the road, all that crap, but it really is. And in that weight division, because in the heavy, because of the weight that you can produce with that shot, it's more important than any other. Because the size of you can have enough power in that shot to make it to punch through the guard. You can. You've seen it, haven't we? So you know it's important though. Whether it's fast and flicking or stepping and pushing behind it in that division more than any other, it's imperative. Go back to Joshua. That's the reason why he's not being as destructive. Is because of his jab. For me, that's all it is. Everything will work off that. Then creates the space to keep him away. Closes the gap so you can get close to him. Stops him from working. Everything to do it. Blinds him with a bit, so you can throw a different shot. It's so important for those big guys more than any other, I feel. And Hrgović, if he's not using it, yeah, it was a hard watch, Zach. I thought that was going to be a decent little fight as it goes, and it turned out not to be.
No.
Luckily, Chisora and Washington
saved the show.
Top trumped them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right, we are going to move on. Before we do, good win for Johnny Fisher against Harry Armstrong, I thought. Certainly after a very electric start. Slowed down a little bit in the middle rounds, but a good stoppage win. But we are going to round off today's live stream. And don't forget to hit the like button, get your questions in for the last little segment. On Emmanuel Navarette against Oscar Valdez. It was packaged up. It was sold to us as the next or the latest installment in the Mexico versus Mexico rivalry. I don't think it necessarily was that, but as a fight itself and as a spectacle and as a performance, Barry Jones, quite the watch for Emmanuel Navarette.
Well, I didn't watch it live, obviously, because I didn't get home till late, and I went straight to bed. I didn't get home till late. I could have watched it live, but I was knackered. And I watched it last night, because I forgot, to be honest. I know, so because I got the kids now, I thought, shit, I got to watch that fight. And it was brilliant. I loved it. Oh, mate, it was just absolutely fantastic. It wasn't like Barrera Morales, of course, but it was really, really good. Another prediction I got totally wrong, by the way.
Yeah,
but
yeah, I got that one right. Just want to put that out there. Carry on. I
just think he put the reach and the jab of Navarette just totally dumbfounded Valdez for quite a lot of the fights. He just couldn't get the judgment of distance right. He fires back like brilliantly, like when he can, but just the work rate, everything about Navarette, and he takes a good shot as well. He takes a good shot without really looking like he's taking a shot. I think. And
he's got a great poker face, hasn't he?
Yeah, and that's someone like Valdez as well, who's willing to walk through a fire. And he's willing to walk through walls, Valdez, to get to you. But then when he's doing that and getting to you, and you're not showing any sign of it, even whether it's hurt or not is irrelevant. You're not showing any sign of it. Gotta be hard to take. Not that Valdez is bothered about it. He showed no. He's the most workmanlike fighter we have in the sport today. He is. He'll just keep going about his job the best he can until he can't anymore. Like, it's absolute credit to the sport. His interview after was just fantastic. Everything about it, but it was a great fight, and right up until the final bell as well. Just wouldn't stop. Neither one. Proper Mexican versus Mexican fight at the highest level, where no one, they're touching gloves when it's low. Touching gloves, all that. But like when the action's happening, they won't let one have. If you hit me with two, I gotta hit you back. I can't let you have more than two punches of success all the time. It was just that no one would want to give any ground. It was brilliant to watch, absolutely brilliant. And after what we've seen, at the O2. It was just different level excitement.
Oh yeah, it was world class boxing. It really was. It was a world class performance from Emmanuel Navarette, Andy, and something that I think on the back of the Liam Wilson performance, where he got dropped heavy, he was hurt in that fight. It wasn't his best performance. A lot of people, Mr. Barry Jones included, questioning whether or not he was, as robust. Yeah, exactly, as robust and as physically imposing at 130 pounds. I'd like to caveat that with the fact that Oscar Valdez is a featherweight who's come up, but a very impressive performance from Navarette. He kind of has that awkward, gangly, long levers, unpredictable thing down to a T, seemingly.
Yeah, he just kind of pours the punches out, doesn't he? They just keep coming and coming and coming and coming. And I think a stat I read today was that he threw over 1,000 punches, and they just come in bundles. He just never really stops throwing, and it was a terrific watch. And there was a good crowd in there too, over 10,000. I think I saw high 10,000s in Glendale. It was great. You know, it was great. It wasn't a great fight because it didn't really kind of like seesaw to and fro.
No, there was
Navarette was just always ahead, wasn't he? It was incredibly competitive all the way through, but there was no real doubt at the end as to who had won. I just thoroughly enjoyed it right from the beginning, right until the end, and it's brilliant, isn't it? When a match gets made and you think, wow, that's going to be great, and then it is. That kind of predictability sometimes is tremendous. And that's what it was. You know, he did look massive compared to Valdez Navarette. That was kind of one thing that struck me when I watched it.
One of the stats beforehand was saying he's only an inch taller or something. He's only an inch or two. So where does that come from? Like,
Bullshit.
I mean, all of these stats you get, they're all ridiculous. But
the heights,
the reach was definitely,
and he's bouncy with it as well.
He has such an awkward way. Like, he crosses. He does so many things wrong. He crosses his feet. He punches from down here. He doesn't bring his hands back.
He bounces into his shots. Every shot's heavy with him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So he doesn't like got the fastest of hands. You know, like you say, almost like he pushes his shots, boom, boom.
Yeah.
But you can see every shot's weighty with the shot because he's so long. Again, the power at the end of the punch we talked about earlier. He gets that right. He gets right at the end of the shot. So it's always like that. Boom, boom.
He's got that kind of rubberiness to him, hasn't he? Whereby he looks a bit uncoordinated sometimes and not really balanced, and like he's kind of.
That's his magic, though.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Robert, that elasticity sort of where he's off it, but then when he gets himself back to, he comes with velocity, doesn't he?
All of a sudden, you know, he can't reach, and then it does reach, and also with those kinds of fighters, when they get hit, they just got that. Again, it's that kind of rubberiness to them where you kind of feel like that looked like it should have landed heavy, but did it though? I don't really know.
Because that herky-jerky style, it's like they just take the thing out of it. Tell you what he does. He doesn't do it in the same way, but Mexicans show the greatest left uppercut. No one else can do it, actually, like they can.
Yeah, he throws it from both stances as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, but he doesn't throw it like the rest of them. The rest of them will lean and throw it short, will slide into the distance, like, you know, like a Marquez.
Yeah, he was a king.
It's sort of like a bowling ball, doesn't he? Sort of
he does it from the other side of the room. You think, so when he's doing it, you go, what's he doing? She's like, they're just going to get knocked out now. You're going to jump with your feet off the floor. But he gets them every time, doesn't he? So it ends up being like that.
That's what I mean. It's one of those ones where if it's coming at you, just thinking, what's this bullshit? And then before you know it, it's hit you.
There used to be a fighter called Neil Swain who never boxed quite like that. He wasn't good, but he was Commonwealth champion. Lost to Michael Brody. Lost to me first. I took his own.
Never the same.
He's never the same after I peppered him with light shots for 6 rounds. After I tickled him for six rounds. But he was the same. He had like a crazy long reach for his height. He was only like 5'5". He had the reach of like a 6'3" man. Like but like you would be up against him, and all of a sudden you go poof, like Spider-Man. He was poof, like that. He was like stuck on your face. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Like
that must be weird.
He stood over there like he just.
That must be really odd.
And that was maybe, and after that fight, it makes you realise when you go like everyone's crazy about height. Height can
reach.
It's a reach. Height could be like
you get tall fighters who don't use that reach that comes with it, do they? But some really do.
And they do it, and also they have that almost like that. It's almost like a telescopic.
Yeah.
It's just like you see it, you go, that's going mad, and it comes back at itself and goes, and then goes over your head.
Yeah.
How would you do that? How would you do that? It's like, and Navarette, he's like that.
Yeah, fighting Mr. Tickle, like
arms all over. Because Valdez is staying nice and compact and nice and tight, and he takes a lot of shots. He takes a lot of shots on his forehead, actually, which is another worry, by the way. But he looks like he blocks a lot of shots, but he dips as well. So he's like this, and he's doing everything right because the punches come over his head, and you can see that's going to miss. And then it changes angle halfway. It sort of changes direction as he's coming towards him. It's coming here, and then it comes coming here, and then he chops back down with it. Like he sort of changed the angle.
Exactly. He must be so hard to read.
Yes,
you've got two awful to fight.
Yeah, in Navarette, you've got someone who looks like impossible to read, and Valdez, because like you say, he's so well schooled and well drilled and well set up. He probably quite easy to read.
That's the best win. I love Joe Cordina. That's the best win in that division.
Yeah.
For the current fighters right now.
Yeah, the other wins of the division would be
that's a real.
Cordina knocking out Agawa in 2 rounds is an impressive.
Yeah, but Valdez is a better fighter than
Agawa. Yeah.
No, I mean for show real stuff. What Cordina did against Agawa was
some really good wins in that division.
Sharky Foster would have win over Ray Vargas. Ray Vargas naturally smaller. Yeah.
I mean, Garcia, when he beat Colbert, he wasn't really supposed to.
Yeah, but Colbert...
It's not the same, but he's still...
But that, against Valdez, like that, because Valdez, arguably Valdez is maybe number 1. Nah, you could argue.
After Stevenson left, yeah, potentially.
Stevenson. Stevenson.
Yeah, but
Cordina arguably number one, by the way, as well. I would say no. So if that they're all vying to see who's the very best, who's going to be the best in that division. But it's all of a sudden it's made that division super exciting. With Navarette seemed to us, he was the champion, that he'd gone a step too far. Well, we were wrong again. I mean, if anything, like. We're like the Midas touch in reverse.
Speak for yourself, mate. Some of us picked him to win by decision, but anyway,
just out of arrogance, out of defiance,
contrarian pick. But I think I don't know whether or not, like Liam Wilson said, didn't he, before the last fight, that he said that he thought that some jiggery pokery had taken place with the scales, because he came in at like 125 or something for a 130 pound fight. He was like, I weighed myself before I came over, I was 129.8 or something, and then they had all of that stuff about did Navarette crash the weight, was he dead at the weight, and then obviously his punch resistance in the fight, and it's just his general demeanor. He didn't really have the spring that he had against Valdez. Maybe it was a bad camp, bad weight cut, just a bad night for Navarette, but he was back to his best on Saturday night. And I think that fight and the manner of the win, I agree, Barry, I think probably, as much as we do all have a lot of love for Joe Cordina on this show, cements Navarette as the number one in the division.
And I love that, because Cordina, like, he's a lovely guy, and he looks like, he's real, but he's a nasty little shit.
And he'll want that fight now.
Yeah, he'll want that fight more than anyone else. He won't. The thought for Joe, the thought that people think that someone's better than him will drive him insane, which I love, because he'll be digging that fight out. That was a great fight. But the thing is, he's so hard. Like, Joe's sublimely, brilliantly skilled. Joe Cordina, really is, and I don't think we've seen the best of him. There you go. There's more to come from Cordina if he can stay at that weight. That would be my only issue. No, he's never said he's had an issue with the weight, but he's too big for the weight, I feel, anyway, Cordina. But if he can stay at that weight, but how would you read Navarette?
Sort of a similar style matchup, isn't it? We've got two. I mean, I think Cordina has better lateral, although Valdez has good lateral movement. But like, you've got like the boxer and the skill.
Yeah. Joe's got better feet.
Yeah.
Than Valdez. Better skills, better all round skills. I think Valdez is a more compact fighter and more experienced as well, by the way, and maybe more committed, because he's used to being in fights where he's had to dig deep, and he's never been found wanted. He lost to Stevenson.
Yeah, but he got outboxed in that fight. It was nothing to do with his will. He was still trying to throw shots in the 12.
He's boxing the future of the world boxing, isn't he? So there's no shame in that. But I mean, he's always found a way to win, always pushes through, but also with skill. Look at the way he dealt with Bachelt, by the way. Who's again, that's why, because that fight is, again, Bachel's another long arm fighter who jumps into attacks, and how easy did he deal with him? Like, too easy. I thought Bachel was going to batter him, I did, to be honest. I thought the weight and how big Bachel is and how hard he is to read. But Navarette is a whole different proposition again, so awkward. And maybe this, he is good at this weight. Maybe sometimes making the weight right. You can make the weight, but how you make the weight's very. Sorry, done again.
You can't stop touching it.
I can't afford the Buatsi, so just the fact that
they're not expensive. Get your subscription anyway.
60p.
No, they're not. They're not 60p anyway.
55p a magazine.
Free to you.
but yeah, so I think it's a real. That's the fight I want to see now. Him and Cordina. There you go. That's the only fight I want to see. We'll have Cordina versus someone else in September if it happens.
Barrett maybe, or
Kakashi. It's a good fight, but you just got to be careful that Joe Jones will be careful that Barrett doesn't become what David Starry was to Joe Kazagi, the fight before the big fight, and then you look awful in it because the guy's actually good, but no one's going to give you credit for beating a guy in an underwhelming performance. That's the problem with Barrett, with the Barrett fight. Barrett's a good fighter. And an awkward fight, and the way he snaps his punches. I know we've gone off Valdez and Navarette here, but the way he punches, the way he throws his punches, is a problem for anyone for a little while. As the fight goes on, I think that'll slow down, and Joe will take over. That makes Joe a massive favourite, but I mean, he might have to be very cautious in that fight and tricky, and it might not be the performance he wants, coming off the back of two really good performances. One absolutely sensational blowout, and the other one was a fantastic fight to watch, where he ticked every single box, by the way. But Navarette would be another proposition, totally other proposition. There'd be a really hard fight, and you would feel that he would be number one in the Ring magazine, which everyone goes off that their ratings. I would say they probably think that's the most fairest assessment in most divisions, and they will have him number one. No, I would say that without a doubt.
Andy, who next for Emmanuel Navarette?
Joe Cordina, I just told you, fuck's sake.
Yeah, I mean, I'd happily watch any of them, those champions, go up against each other. It's a good division, isn't it? Shaki Foster was impressive last time out. I saw him the previous year in Dubai in the March. I spent a little bit of time with him because I didn't really know anything about him. Good story behind him. That was a massive fight for him, and he got a good win that night. And now you feel like he's one of those fighters who maybe never really expected to get here. He's always had ability from what I've been told, and people always knew that. But he ended up in jail for a bit. He had problems. He had to move away from the area he's from because that wasn't doing him any favours. And often fighters like that, when they get there, when they maybe, like I say, thought it wasn't going to happen, they keep that bit between their teeth when they win a title in a way that sometimes other people don't. But I just feel like that's true of all of them. I think that's true of all of them. And if I had to pick, Cordina, because we know him, and I think that would be a really good fight.
I think Navarette has an easy night with Foster, just because Foster's a constant mover, and you think that would be harder for him. But I think Foster will think he's in a safe distance, and Navarette gets you. I think Cordina would be more inclined to slide into the distance, try and get inside the long reach, which is a worry of itself, by the way, because you've got to know there's going to be uppercuts coming right onto your chin. But I think that would be a physically harder fight for Navarette, I think, Cordina, and a more exciting fight to watch.
Well, there we go. We are almost there. We're there or thereabouts. So any final questions while we run through the last little bits of business? Get them in before we get going. One bit of business. I don't suppose either of you would have managed to watch it because I had to find a very, very dodgy stream in the middle of the night to see Emmanuel Rodriguez become a 2-time world bantamweight champion with a really good performance against largely untested but still unbeaten Melvin Lopez. Very good performance from Emmanuel Rodriguez. I think the fact that he's able to really dominate en route to we almost stopped him. He had him down 3 times in the final round. A game unbeaten contender really puts Inoue's second round stoppage win over him in Glasgow into perspective. Really good performance from Emmanuel Rodriguez, and I think pretty much the way that I see the bantamweight division anyway, I think he's pretty much up there for the person to stake the claim to the bantamweight division post Inoue. Not old, 30, 31. He's not old.
I was going to say 32.
He's well placed, isn't he? And I just I'm pleased for him because I remember seeing him against Paul Butler and thought he was really good that night. And just before that, Ryan Burnett, I think he gave up a belt, not rather than fight Rodriguez, but you have decisions to make during the course of your career, and it kind of you got the feeling that people realised that he was good and that he was a problem, and that if there was another route to go, then it was probably better to go that route rather than fight him. This is it's business, isn't it? And he was good against Butler, and then I just kind of felt for him against Inoue because that's just kind of one of my favourite ever nights. It was just a wild night.
Yeah, really good night that was.
Just the look on his face when he went down. I've talked about it before as being a good example of someone just being in shock. Like when Curtis Stevens got put down by Golovkin. It's the greatest testament to Inoue I think I've seen. It's still now because I always thought Rodriguez was good and he got put down and he was just on the canvas with that look on his face, and I'll just never forget it. So it's good. I just like the fact that maybe he's gonna, capitalise now that Inoue has moved up.
Yeah, I mean, and he was disgustingly robbed against Ray-Mark Gaballo a few fights ago. Gaballo then ended up boxing Nonito Donaire. It would have been great to see Donaire versus Manuel Rodriguez. That would have been a really good fight. And obviously Donaire now, I don't know what he's going to be doing with his career, but was thoroughly second best against Alejandro. What was his last name? Alex, someone help me. Yeah. It's been a long day.
I was there as well.
Yeah, I was there as well. But anyway, it's been a long. Sorry, Andy. But yeah,
I was there thinking, no way did he beat Donaire a few years ago?
No, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, he might not have even beaten Donaire 18 months ago. I mean, the Donaire that won the bantamweight title back was a handful, but it looks as though it might come. But anyway, for Manny Rodriguez, I mean, he also has a win over Jason Maloney, who's also now a world champion as well. So we could see that rematch happen for a unification bout. Be nice to see.
It's good to have. He's a Puerto Rican as well, isn't he? It's good to have a Puerto Rican up there.
Yeah,
they've been a bit thin on the ground.
They don't really have an awful lot at the minute. Like
Alexander Zayas.
Yeah, but he's still a ways away from competing for titles.
Not turned out to be quite
maybe not necessarily what everybody
since
thought.
Cotto, it's not really happened, has it?
No.
If Felix Verdeo was going to be the guy, wasn't he?
Yeah, less said about him the better. But anyway, also an interesting result on the undercard for those that care. Trayvon Marshall, heavily hyped prospect, got knocked out in 2 rounds by Gabriel Maestre in a shock.
He's been around the block a few times.
Yeah, I mean, he's a 2-time Olympian, and he's now 6-0-1. I think he is now.
He seems like he's been around forever. Yeah, I remember watching him. He's a good WSB fighter as well, actually.
Yeah, and you could see in the ring. We spoke about it on the way in. You could see the difference in seasoning between Trayvon Marshall, good fighter, young prospect coming up, but you can't beat that experience. Okay, and before we round things off, there's a couple of shows this weekend to keep us ticking over. One fight that I'd like us to just briefly touch upon is Dennis McCann versus Baluta, which I think is a really interesting fight. Baluta is one of my favoritist away fighters. Every time we talk about him on here. I
don't even know if he's an away fighter anymore.
No.
He's based over here.
Yeah, he's based over here, and he's probably won enough fights to now be considered a home fighter, hasn't he? I mean, his last fight beat Andrew Kane in his last fight. It's a really tough fight for Dennis McCann, I think.
But I think it's the fight that there's at some point you've got to put him in a real test, haven't you? And to see, because they're talking about he's like they're trying to sell him as the new Naz originally. He's always a stupid expectation.
Anyone who throws a corkscrew uppercut's the new Naz now.
But anyway, it's just a stupid expectation to put on anybody. I remember David Hay said, we were doing the thing on with BT at the time, and he said, yeah, but Naz wasn't a puncher when he first turned pro. Like, what the fuck you want about? Naz was a puncher when he was 13, and I seen him. But it's the right test for him. But there's a real risk factor to it as well. Because again, he's not going to get away with some of the stuff that he does with other guys. He's going to get caught as well. Baluta fires back and fires long as well. That's the worry. And yes, it's a hard fight for him. I do think McCann will come through it though. I do. I think he's really clever. I think he swivels around the target. I'm not going to say the word.
Swivel.
I try to say the word pivot all the time.
Barry Jones.
But one trick pony I am. But he moves around the body really quickly. So I think that'll cause Baluta plenty of trouble. I think that's where he'll have his success. But he has to go the distance. I'm pretty sure of that. If he gets a stoppage, it'd be unbelievable. But I think he has to go the distance, and he'll have some hard rounds. But I do think he'll win wide, but not comfortable.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
He's going to get beaten.
Competitive
you know he's going to get knocked out now, don't you?
Andy, how do you see that fight taking place? I mean, I think I agree with what you've said, Barry, in a sense of it's the acid test, isn't it? This is the one where you find out whether or not Dennis McCann can go that extra level. It's not a gimme by any stretch of the imagination.
It's good matchmaking though.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it is the ideal thing for him if they because they need to find out now. Because it doesn't matter how confident you are that you know what you've got. You need to actually know, and this should tell them. And
good matchmaking, by the way, doesn't always mean it's going to result in a win for your guy.
No. Well, it means you get your answer.
Yeah.
Whichever one it is, and you hope that it's the one that you want, but it might not be.
Well, for the promoter, it's about the investment as well. Do I commit financially to this kid now? Because he's not going to be their flagship fighter, but he's going to be one of their guys who they're saying he's going to be a world champion or multi-weight world champion they were talking about a few years ago, and they might still believe that. He might still become that. He's still young, still very young. So, right, this is now he's got to 11 now. What is he now? 15 or something? Is he? So he's around that sort of mark, isn't he? But so you go, hang on a minute. No, this is the time we're going to start pushing you now, really on, because we got to push you.
Yeah, and I think it's right that they've taken their time with him because he turned pro without any senior amateur experience, which quite a lot of people have done over the last 2 or 3 years, and I'm not a fan of it. I think that just one season in the seniors where you're fighting men, I think is definitely worth it. I remember talking to Al Smith about it a little while ago, and I mentioned that, and he said I practically begged him just to stay in for one season as a senior, and he wouldn't do it. But physically, over the last kind of 3 years, whenever I've seen him in the ring and kind of sort of outside, he's looked different every time. You kind of watched him turn from a boy into a man physically. So I think that's a big part of the reason why they'll feel like he's ready for this now, because I don't think anyone's ever really questioned the skill level. I've never heard anyone question the commitment either. He definitely doesn't lack when it comes to self-belief. But you can have all of those things. But as you mentioned, you mentioned Trayvon Marshall and that kind of scenario. You can have all of those things, but then if you find yourself still as a bit of a boy, really physically fighting a man, it can all go badly wrong.
Absolutely. The last 6 fights for Baluta, he's 4-2, and his last 6 fights have been TJ Doheny, David Oliver Joyce, Michael Conlon, Brad Foster, Liam Davies, Andrew Kane. They've been his last 6 fights.
There you go,
and he's 4-2.
3-way, yeah. So he beat Donaghy and Joyce, didn't he?
Yeah. Then he stopped Joyce in 3 rounds.
He lost to Conlon, but
in a close
one
fight.
judge gave it a draw, didn't he? I think.
Yeah. Then he beat Brad Foster. Yeah. Was beaten by Liam Davies, who I think is one of the more underrated fighters around the circuit. And then he beat Andrew Kane after picking himself off the deck I think twice in the first round. Yeah. So.
And doesn't for McCann, he's still featherweight, isn't he?
So super bantam.
Super bantam again.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's gone back down, which I think was good because I was worried when he started popping up at feather and they started talking, because I did feel like, I mean, when you're young and at that age as well, I mean, not advocating for people, making impossible weights,
but whilst you can make
while
it,
your body's got that elasticity, and I did feel like the higher he went and filling out, you're not going to get that man strength. Well, boxing for titles at super bantam, I think, is the right way.
I think super bantam weight now is at the world stage is really like weak. A new way, maybe.
You say it in jest, but there's actually, I think we all expect a new way to box to Parles next. I think we all expect, if that fight was to happen, a new way to win. And then he's probably looking at featherweight. You could be in a situation in 12, 18 months' time where you've got vacant belts.
You can pick it.
A win over Baluta, then if he beats Baluta, it's 12 rounds and he beats him 117, 111, and he deserves it. He's had to weather some storms in the mid-round.
That's the ideal scenario.
Exactly, perfect. You want to see him get hit and Baluta start to get on top of him in the middle rounds. He has to tough it out. Then you got no problem sticking him in with a fringe world. Baluta is a fringe world level guy. There's no two ways about it.
It's the frustration and not losing his shape in that frustration. He's going to be frustrated. If he loses his shape, you get tagged, and it's that I think. So yeah, if he can cope with that, I think he can actually. I think he has I think he's good rhythm to his work, and even though he likes to be showboating a little bit, he doesn't go over the top with it. And I think this fight will give him that bit of an edge to get down to business. I think it could win. I was featherweight for a while. Nathaniel Collins boxes, didn't he, as well?
But yes,
the fear factor will definitely be there for him. I think that kind of right. This is it now. This is the first really, really big fight of his career where it could go wrong if he's not on it.
And the final fight this weekend, we might as well mention it because we're almost there anyway, is Galal Yafai versus Tommy Frank. Galal Yafai tops a bill in Birmingham.
Yeah, good thing to do with him, Olympic gold medalist.
Good thing to do in general, I think, for Birmingham.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's not too many shows that go there. We had the Buatsi cards. When was that? May.
Start of May.
But obviously Buatsi's not from Birmingham, so it's nice to have.
But there are plenty of fighters who are. They might not all be at that real top level, but there's a lot of good fighters to watch around there. And you've got some others who aren't from that far away. Fraser's not that far away. I know kind of Sky think like with
him and Ben Witt.
Ben Whittaker, and even it can be. I think it's underused as a boxing city myself.
But Galal is from there, so it'd be good to get him. Good to get him. If he can get if he gets good support, that's important. If he can draw a decent crowd, they'll go back. I think it's a good fight. It's a hard fight for him actually, and a risky fight. I think because it's he's going. It's almost like he's stepping down a level. A little bit now. No, I think maybe. But Tommy Frank's a good fighter. Tenacious. They had a great fight with that Welsh kid, didn't he? What's his name?
They'll love you for that.
What's that?
It's because he's from Swansea. You don't remember his name. Yeah. I think. Look, I don't know. It's a funny one with Galal because much was made about him going straight into 10 rounders when
Jay Harris,
yes. Well, I knew who you meant. I didn't realise you were actually serious. But anyway, shout out Jay Harris.
Kills me. There's another boxer from Swans. I forget his name. Colin somebody.
But well, what was I saying? With Galal, he turned over and starts boxing 10 rounds, but he's not boxing 10-round opponents. There's no way you can tell me the guy he boxed on his debut in a 10-round fight for the WBC intergalactic title or whatever it was a 10-round fighter. He wasn't. So it's interesting that they've gone for this opponent for him. And I think it's good. I think it will be helpful for him to top a bill in Birmingham with respect against a guy who can speak English and someone that he I would imagine Yafai will stop. I think. I think that's a good step
Tommy Frank
forward
go
here.
right at him, I think, and Nana won't probably bowl well. I think, but what you gave with all the Yafais, actually, they're all physically strong, hittable. Even Galal's hit those.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
for an Olympic gold medalist, he's surprisingly hittable, but his engine and the weight of his shots, I think, and his work rate would be too much.
Yeah, I thought his last fight he just started to slow things down a little bit more and just start to fight well on the inside. Right, okay, that's all we've got time for. So we're going to go around and we're going to do some predictions beforehand because we're really good at them. So we want to make sure that we get those in. Andy, you're going to come to you first, and we're going to start with the fight that we were talking about when we opened the boxing show live. Joshua Buatsi versus Dan Azeez.
So I'll be commentating on that one.
That's his way of saying he's not going to give a prediction. But anyway, over to Andy Clarke.
But I make Joshua Buatsi the favourite.
There we go. That's good enough. Okay.
Yeah,
Barry?
I think Buatsi as well.
Okay.
I'm generally not sure how, though. I think it might go down to the wire, but I think the way Azeez fights, I think Joshua might stop him.
Interesting.
I think it's fair that Buatsi starts as favourite.
Yeah, I think he has to.
Yeah.
He has to.
But I tell you what,
but, it's not...
just one caveat though. If there's any sort of frailty though in Buatsi about the temperament, about this relaxed attitude, and if that's translates in the ring, he can't dig deep, which I think he will be able to. Then he's in trouble. Like in someone like Azeez, that's the worst. To find out you haven't got that real grit
against somebody who you
like
know does.
Someone who will, someone who's a bit like a train, then that's the worst time to find that out. But I think we'll find out that he has.
I'm going to go for Joshua Buatsi. I'm not sure whether or not he's going to catch fire. Sparred a lot of rounds together, those guys, and
sometimes that
always
true,
like when you hear that, and then when you look at the styles of them as well, it's like I think
it's a different intensity though.
Yeah, no, of course I get that, but stylistically, they're not two guys who conventionally get in there and mix it up really anyway. I don't think.
But Azeez will know he'll have to. Azeez know we can't. Azeez will know no he can't. He'll know we cannot box him. I think.
But I'll go for Buatsi points. Up next, because it's definitely happening in January. Definitely. Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder. Barry, going to come to you first.
Well, Wilder.
Okay.
By stoppage, I think. I think either one of them by stoppage. I would say that, but I think right now you'd have to go with Wilder. I think that's pretty not obvious, but it is.
This is the obvious pick. Andy, do you subscribe to that?
Same. It wouldn't be the sensible. I'd be going against like all my kind of own rules. If
you're very logical when it comes to your breakdown. That's one thing that we love about Andy. Okay, I'll go for Wilder. But I don't want to be contrarian
with
2 weeks
Buatsi and Azeez, and with both of those two, no one's saying that the other one can't win.
No, for sure, yeah. For sure. Right, okay, and then the last two that we have just spoken about. So I'm going to come to you first. Andy Dennis McCann versus Yonat Baluta.
I think McCann is going to do the business. I think this will prove to be exactly what they wanted it to be. And what you were just saying about like a 116, 112, 117, 111, where maybe at the halfway point, Baluta rallies and he's got to provide a response, that kind of thing. I think it will work.
Pretty much the same. I think it'd be,
and then a full house. Yeah,
uncomfortable but not close.
Okay, I think it will be close. And I think McCann will get it, but I think it will be close. And then the final one, Yafai versus Tommy Frank.
Yeah, I think Yafai, around the 7, 8, 9, something like that. I think Frank will be fast and try and throw in combinations, try and step off a bit, but Yafai will just gobble up the space on him, keep pounding away, and also move, and he'll just block the escape routes for Frank in the end. I think once he backs Frank up, which I think he will be able to, then Frank's going to be in trouble.
Andy,
I think it'll be a good fight actually. That will.
Yeah,
I do. Yeah,
I'll be there.
I think Yafai as well. I think maybe a bit later. I think he's got plenty of minerals. Frank, I think he might kind of stick it out almost till the bitter end.
I'm going to go for Yafai, and I go for a little bit earlier, actually. I think Yafai around 5, 6. I think that's
quite bold.
Yeah, and I'm like, don't get me wrong, Galau's a very good fighter. I've got no issue with him, but like, still, I've got not the brakes on, but I think you know, we all talk about it every so often, well, very often lately, about the flyweight division, super flyweight division. People kind of, well, he's a nailed-on world champion. There are no nailed-on world champions after 3 or 4 fights, particularly in those weight classes. So, but I do feel like Galal Yafai will look good this weekend, and I'm looking forward to seeing him box. Okay, that's all we have time for this week on a very, very special live edition of the boxing show here at ID Towers. But that is all we have time for. So thanks very much to Mr. Barry Jones and Mr. Andy Clarke for stopping by and joining us. And to you, our faithful audience who have stuck it out until the bitter end this week. Don't forget to let us know in the comments who you think's going to win all of the fights that we've just mentioned there. I'm not going to repeat them again and bore you and take up any more of your time. But for me, Rob Tebbutt, from these two over here, thanks very much for stopping by, and we'll catch up with you next time. It's the bit where